Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by.
The London Assembly is the voice of London, composed of 25 members elected at the same time as the Mayor in order to hold him to account and to scrutinise his policies. Can I welcome members, officers and the public here in the gallery and watching on the webcast. This is a Mayor's Question Time meeting of the Assembly, which means that all members are invited to attend and ask questions of the Mayor. In case of an emergency and any need to exit the building, guests seated in the public gallery should follow security staff and Assembly members should follow the meeting clerk. Members are reminded that any electronic devices should not be placed in front of the microphones, which must be turned on to speak, and please turn them off once finished. Can I now ask the clerk, Rebecca Arnold, to confirm any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies today from Assembly members Cooper and Turrell.
Thank you very much. Our last plenary meeting was followed by a People's Question Time meeting in Wandsworth last week. Since then, the London Assembly Confirmation Hearings Committee met to question and assess Mette Coburn, the Mayor's proposed appointment to the chair of Re-London. The committee voted to not object to the appointment by a majority. The Economy, Culture and Skills Committee began a two-part investigation into care leavers accessing employment, education or training in London. The Transport Committee held the final meeting of its investigation into accessibility and inclusion in transport planning, asking the Deputy Mayor for Transport and TfL representatives about TfL's Equity in Motion plan. The Budget and Performance Committee questioned the Mayor's housing leads on how the Mayor will fund building programmes through his 2025-26 budget, and spoke with the GLA officers about the processes for designing their budgets and how they consider the context of external impacts such as the government's autumn budget. The Housing Committee examined the impact of costs associated with the leasehold model of home ownership on Londoners. Guests were asked whether the Mayor and the government are doing enough to support people who are facing excessive costs. And the Planning and Regeneration Committee published a letter calling for the Mayor of London to fight the planned closure of Billingsgate and Smithfield markets. And this week, the Budget and Performance Committee questioned senior Transport for London officers on its proposed 2025-26 budget, including looking at any possibility of changes to fares. The Police and Crime Committee held a question and answer session with the Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime on the Mayor's updated Policing and Crime Plan and the HMICFRS Peel inspection. The GLA Oversight Committee held a question and answer session with the Deputy Mayor for Culture and the Creative Industries, and later this afternoon the audit panel will review issues including the GLA's land and property governance and its follow-up review of planning arrangements for the Mayor of London and London Assembly members' elections in May 2024. Again, a very busy time that we've had since our last meeting. Can I ask the Assembly to note the interests set out in item 2, and do Assembly members have any other disclosable pecuniary interests which relate to the items on the agenda for today's meeting, or any other relevant interests, including any declarations in relation to gifts and hospitality which are not reflected on the authority's register of gifts and hospitality? No, that's a no. Assembly Member Garbett.
Sorry, just to declare, it's not on my register of interest yet. I haven't declared it as a gift that I was given a pass to a harm reduction conference in Warsaw, which does relate to my question later.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the declaration. Can I ask the Assembly to confirm the minutes of the London Assembly Mayor's Question Time meeting held on the 21st of November 2024 to be signed by me as a correct record? Can I ask the Assembly to formally receive the Mayor's report covering the period from the 8th of November to the 5th of December 2024? The Mayor will now provide an oral update of 5 minutes in length on matters occurring since the publication of his report. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. Let me begin by wishing everyone celebrating here in London and across the world a peaceful and joyous Christmas. Hope every Londoner enjoys the season of goodwill, doing what matters to them most and in the company of loved ones. This is also time to remember that London remains the greatest city in the world, largely because we have some of the finest people in its service. So on behalf of all Londoners, can I express my heartfelt gratitude to every member of our emergency and transport services, especially those who will be away from their homes and families, working to keep our city safe and moving over this festive period. I can also thank those that work for charities and volunteers who will be working during this Christmas period. And let me, Chair, also pay tribute to all our staff here at City Hall for their hard work and dedication in 2024. Chair, can I also take this opportunity to thank Assembly members Emma Best, Krupesh Hirani and James Small-Edwards for demonstrating their football skills on Monday at the inaugural London versus homelessness game between politicians and journalists. The less said about the final score, I think, the better. The game was organised to raise awareness of our goal to end rough sleeping by 2030, and I'm proud to say that this week we're taking some steps towards realising that ambition. We're now providing an additional £300,000 to London homelessness charities Crisis and St Mungo's for their work this Christmas. And yesterday, London was awarded almost £380 million from the government to tackle homelessness next year, £80 million more than we received last year. People surviving in shop fronts, parks and abandoned buildings is a scandal. Making it right matters to Londoners and it matters to me. It's why since 2016 we've quadrupled City Hall's rough sleeping budget, supporting more than 17,600 people off our streets, 3/4 of whom have stayed off. However, the number of people without a place to call home reveals the scale of the challenge. My promise to Londoners is that working alongside a government which shares a determination, charities, experts and others, we can and will end rough sleeping in London for good. Chair, let me end by wishing everyone in the Assembly a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I've been asked to give one oral update, Chair, which is from Assembly Member Caroline Russell on the Tower Hamlets LTNs. Walking and cycling infrastructure, including low-traffic neighbourhoods, plays an important role in making our streets safer and enabling more active travel across London. I understand that the claimants in this case are considering an appeal. TfL will, of course, consider any implications for this specific scheme and TfL funding. Decisions on schemes such as these are a matter for local councils, but TfL will also examine any implications for borough schemes it funds more generally. Both TfL and I remain committed to the targets set out in the transport strategy. Across the capital, boroughs continue to make excellent progress with work to plan or deliver more school streets, new schemes delivering 20 miles per hour speed limits, new and upgraded pedestrian crossings and new cycle routes. TfL will continue to support boroughs that want to deliver healthy streets initiatives.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Now, the boroughs are expecting feedback on their LIP delivery plans in the second week of January. This is essential work to help you meet your MTS targets. Can you commit to being transparent and communicating clearly and regularly with the boroughs over any impact of the ruling on these safe and healthy streets funding decisions?
Thank you for your question and your interest in this matter. As I said in my answer, TfL are considering any implications. I'm not sure if there are in relation to the judgment, but the TfL always works closely with the boroughs who submit their LIPs, the local implementation plans, to TfL with their sustainable travel options. And you will be aware they're going to be consistent with the MTS, and TfL will work with the boroughs in a transparent way to make sure plans are in accordance with relevant parts of the MTS if boroughs want funding.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We now move to the questions on the priority order paper. Each group is allocated an amount of time to ask their questions that's proportionate to their size. The first question today is regarding Operation Winter Nights from Assembly Member Desai.
Thanks for your question. Keeping Londoners safe remains my top priority, and visible, targeted and proactive policing is key to achieving this goal. I was pleased to visit Stratford with Assemblymember Desai last month to observe the Metropolitan Police Service's efforts to increase patrols and partnership working in busy locations across London during this festive period. In recent years, the MPS has developed pan-London plans to address seasonal crime trends, including Operation Winter Nights. This year, the MPS has instead introduced local community crime fighting plans. These build on learning from previous operations, including specific winter operations to address safety issues during the winter months. Community crime fighting plans are borough-based and led by dedicated neighbourhood superintendents. They're developed in collaboration with local partners and the community and incorporate local ward priorities. These plans are complemented by changes to the MPS tasking and coordination process that enables both local and force-wide priorities to be matched with available resources. In this way, local issues can gain the support of specialist central assets to address their problems, while at the same time ensuring force-wide priorities receive appropriate focus. These changes are part of the New Met for London programme, under which efforts are tailored to local needs and are driven and delivered in a way that benefits each local community. MOPAC is supporting the MPS by convening partners to address priority challenges and progress crime reduction strategies through the Robbery Reduction Partnership. I've always been clear that we can't arrest our way out of crime. That's why my Violence Reduction Unit is investing in an approach to tackle violence that's rooted in prevention and early intervention. We're delivering interventions and activities to keep young people safe both in and out of school, and embedding youth workers in police custody and hospitals to prevent reoffending. We've already provided more than 500,000 positive opportunities for young Londoners, and we're working to provide 250,000 more. And we've invested record amounts into policing, funding 1,300 more police officers and 500 additional PCSOs. I'll continue to work closely with the Commissioner to ensure neighbourhood policing responds to the needs and concerns of London's communities.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'm concerned that recently the BBC found that less than half of the pubs they visited failed to respond to the Ask Angela code word. This comes as spiking offences are already up by 18% this year. What is being done to make all pub workers aware of Ask Angela and to ensure that potential victims do not fall through the cracks?
Thanks for your question. I mean, the member will be aware that spiking is now a specific criminal offence. Look, I was disappointed both by the BBC report yesterday and the one a few weeks ago, which shows, in fact, for a variety of reasons, high turnover of staff and so forth, many staff whose venues have signed up to the Ask for Angela scheme, the Women's Night Safety Charter, some of the staff appear not to know what to do when somebody asks for Angela. For those that don't know, that's a scheme for those women who have been harassed in a venue can go to a member of staff and use the code word, and staff should respond accordingly to make sure that person is dealt with who's harassing the woman. We're speaking to the Safer Business Network in relation to what more they can be doing. We're speaking to BIDS, and I'm hoping in due course we'll be setting out what further work we'll be doing to make sure all our venues are as safe as they can be.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In that context, as you already said, the Prime Minister reaffirmed his intention to make drink spiking a standalone offence, something that both you and I have been asking for quite some time. Indeed, it's supported by other Assembly members. Mr. Mayor, also, can I endorse what you said about the work that our frontline services do, the blue light services, and you thanking them. I'm seeing new blue light services later on, and I will pass your message on to them. And finally, can I wish you and your family a good break and seasonal greetings. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is in the name of Assembly Member Garrett, and it concerns New Year's resolutions.
Good morning. Thanks for your question. It's been a good year for London. In the mayoral election in May, Londoners voted decisively for the politics of progress and unity over the politics of division. Then again in July, Londoners and people across the country voted for climate action and clean rivers, for the rebuilding of our NHS, for free breakfast clubs in every primary school, for good public services and for social justice. The end of the year is a time to reflect on what we've achieved, and together in London, we've achieved a lot. For the first time, every child in every London State primary and every school day can now sit down with their classmates and share a healthy lunch. 10 million Londoners now breathe cleaner air. We've built a record number of affordable homes. We've introduced the Hopper Fare, extended the Northern Line and opened the Elizabeth Line, as well as investing record sums in youth clubs and services while supporting and challenging the MPS to reform. It's also time to look forward at what we want to achieve next year and in the coming years. My number one priority remains making London a safer city for all by being tough on crime and tough on the complex causes of crime. Universal free school meals will be on the table for as long as I'm mayor. We'll put London on course to end rough sleeping for good by 2030. We'll build in our status as a leader on climate and environmental action the world over. We'll continue to build the homes Londoners need, including an additional 40,000 new council homes by the end of the decade. We must now secure investment and break ground on the next generation of transport infrastructure projects, and we'll deliver a new London growth plan helping to create more than 150,000 good jobs. Because our nation has had its voice heard at the general election, we can now raise our ambitions in London for the future. We now have more investment going into TfL, council home building, our schools and the NHS. We'll restore Oxford Street to its former glory, and it'll bring High Speed 2 to Euston. So Londoners can look forward with a renewed optimism and a belief that working together will continue to make London a safer, fairer, greener city for everyone.
So my question was about your New Year's resolutions. So some people perhaps over Christmas might be lucky enough to get a new mobile phone from Santa, and they might be hoping that it doesn't get stolen from them in a city where increasingly theft feels like it's been legalised. Do you have a New Year's resolution to get a grip of that problem?
So I think there's a question later on specifically on this. Personal robbery and personal theft is traumatic for the victims, and particularly with a mobile phone which has a lot of personal data on it. We have unfortunately seen an increase in both personal theft of mobile phones and personal robbery of mobile phones across the country, across Europe, and that doesn't exclude London. So we've set out a number of things to address this issue. In answer to the question from Senator Desire, set out the changes in the new Met for London plan to tackle these hotspots where we know, I'm afraid, perpetrators target people using their phones as they are entitled to do. So in addition to enforcement, there is some potential good news in relation to prevention. He'll remember, he's a similar age to me, a bit younger, but the theft of stereos from... The theft from stereos in cars used to be a common thing 20, 30 years ago. We designed that out by just putting them into the dashboard. Similarly, in other issues to do with, there's ink on cash in banks, ink on clothes. We're asking phone manufacturers to have a kill switch. So if a phone is stolen, it's of no value to the person who steals it. So that's some of the stuff we're doing around prevention. But he's right, we need to do more enforcement as well.
Which was sort of my question. So do you have a New Year's resolution to do more on that, and if so, what? Because obviously yesterday you published your new police and crime plan, which is not just for the coming year, but for the rest of your term, and there's really nothing in it about mobile phones. I've got it in front of me here. It basically says it's essentially a steady state, continue as we are, and maybe ask some other people, phone manufacturers, to do some things which are unspecified? What are you actually doing to get a grip? Because in any case, sometimes these are stolen for parts. So even if the software is disabled, the parts still have a value.
He's right. We've had examples of parts being sent to other parts of the world, not just in this country, and that's why it's really important to work with the manufacturers in relation to making those parts useless. I mentioned the issue of ink in relation to clothes and cash. There's no reason at all why manufacturers can't be using similar things in relation to phones. So he'll be aware that the main way phones are stolen is a combination of personal theft and personal robbery. So there is a lot in the Police and Crime Plan around public protection. A lot in relation to how we reduce robbery. He'll be aware of this year the launch of the robbery reduction team. That includes partners working with us, the design of the public realm, very important in relation to where these thefts and robberies are taking place, better areas, less crime. Working with those in the business community, really important as well as enforcement. So we now have the data and Chief Scientific Officer who helps the Met Police Service use the data to make sure the police are targeting those areas where we know in the past there's been personal theft and personal robbery. We know, I'm afraid, the biggest age group who are victims of phone theft are young people. So working with schools is really important as well.
Sorry, no, so all of these are things that you're doing. Is anything, please don't give me a lengthy list of things you're already doing. What new things might you be doing next year? Rather, because we know that the things that you're doing now aren't working, because that's brought us to the point that we're at. So what new things might you be doing in the new year in your new crime plan?
Well, let me answer directly. So a new thing we'll be doing next year is meeting with the Home Secretary and the phone manufacturers about them doing a new thing, which is putting a kill switch on their phones. Another new thing we'll be asking the phone manufacturers.
That's the thing that you're asking them to do. It's not a thing that you're doing, is it? OK, well, let me say, to me that feels like a lot of vague waffle, but I hope Londoners will form their own view on the results. I suppose we will see what they are in due course. Bicycle theft isn't mentioned at all in the big piece of work you put out yesterday about police and crime. That also feels like it's been legalised. You probably saw the example of Dr. Newport, who had his bike stolen from in front of Scotland Yard and was told there was no CCTV. What are you doing to get a grip of bicycle theft?
So the member's been a member for a few years, and I'm surprised he doesn't realise the Police and Crime Plan is up for consultation, and the member is entitled...
You're putting the blame on Londoners. Look, this is your plan of what you want to do. You can ask Londoners to comment on it, but the piece of work you have put together does not contain anything about bicycle theft. So I'm asking you, what are you going to do?
Assembly member, you must allow the Mayor to answer.
It'll be a chance to be a fine thing.
Jumping in after 2 words is not giving the Mayor a chance to answer.
Maybe a New Year's resolution.
So what are you doing to tackle bicycle theft, Mr. Mayor? What are you doing? There's the question. Off you go.
Well, so the police are bearing down on the issue of personal theft of bicycles. They've done a number of things already to address this issue in relation to supporting the victims. They're working to make sure they've got better ways of assessing where bikes have been stolen to. They're working with those who work in manufacturing of bikes and those who mark bikes to make sure when a bike is stolen it's easier to retrieve. We know technology means there is now GPS on some bikes which make it easier for the police to retrieve and bring these bikes back. One of the big challenges the police have is the finite resources they've got. We're hoping that going forward the police will have more support in relation to tackle these issues. I'd encourage the member to respond to the draft Police and Crime Plan in relation to the period that's open for consultation. It is a consultation.
I'm sure I will, because I've got some ideas which you don't seem to have. So you mentioned GPS. This is a source of huge frustration to people on mobile phones, and we've seen on bikes, where these things are tracked. People watch on a little map where they go to, and the police don't seem to be very interested in doing anything about it time and again. What are you doing to try to get the police to do something about that?
Well, I'm sorry he thinks the police aren't doing anything to tackle this issue. The police work incredibly hard where they've got limited resources to tackle these sorts of...
my question.
To tackle these sorts of issues, and they'll make sure that they address these issues. One of the reasons why we have a consultation on the Police and Crime Plan is for people to respond to that, to let the police know their priorities in relation to what they'd like the police to be tackling. In the answer to the question from Senator Desai, I set out one of the things the police are doing this year, different from last year, is rather than a pan-London approach in relation to an issue, Operation Winter Nights, they have specific localised approaches to address specific issues. So in particular communities, I know bike theft is an issue. In those communities, the police will be responded in a targeted manner.
OK, so what we heard is what other people are going to do and a lot of status quo. I hope things do improve next year. Didn't hear anything there that gave me any hope for the new year, Mr Mayor.
Assembly Member Georgiou, please. It was a flourish, yes, we know. Assembly Member Georgiou, please.
Good morning, Mr Mayor. May I wish you and your family a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Mr Mayor, will you keep a promise as a New Year's resolution to Londoners and just admit the truth, that a vote for Labour is a vote for broken promises and punishments wrought on Londoners?
I think we have the ghosts of Christmas past. Tony Devonish is back. And so, yeah. Thankfully, he's not ghosts of present and future. Well done, James. And so, look, I'm really pleased that compared to the previous 8 years before I became mayor, where fares went up by 42%, in 5 of the years they've been frozen. They're about 21% cheaper than they would be had they gone up by RPI plus 1. I think 16% had they gone up by national rail. I'm really pleased to have announced that bus and trams will be frozen for next year. That means the unlimited hopper will also continue. For £1.75, you have unlimited bus and tram travel, the cheapest bus fares, as I understand it, across the country. We will be increasing tube and overground fares by 4.6%, and there's a very good reason why. We've seen this government has almost doubled our capital funding for 25-26 to what we received last year, and almost doubling of capital funding. The prize we have is the possibility of a multi-year capital deal, which is something we've not received for some time. And so one of the consequences of us doing that 5.6% increase in tube and overground is the possibility of our assets being maintained better, renewed better, and growing better, which Londoners will welcome.
Right, Mr Mayor, you've pointed out that we've had a general election, in recent history, 5 months ago. So let me jog your memory about the people that you've sold out to in government. We've had an above-inflation pay rise for the unions. Then we had a budget that the OBR said would push up inflation, which it has, and inflation is now up the second consecutive month. We then had pensioners stripped of their winter fuel payments. We then had family farms attacked with the inheritance tax. We then had parents attacked for sending their children to private school. And sadly, as a result of this, we've got to hear this song that's now at #1 about Keir Starmer and freezing grannies. So, Mr Mayor, is it about time you admit that this government's decisions are just a punishment on Londoners?
Can I do with the first part of that 3-minute question, which is this criticism that the government's given unions a pay increase. I'm really proud that doctors are getting a pay increase, junior doctors. I'm really proud nurses are getting a pay increase. You know what? I'm really proud our police are getting a pay increase. I'm really proud our transport workers are getting a pay increase. And I think what Londoners have heard just now is the Conservative Party against those hard-working Londoners who work in the public sector getting a well-deserved pay rise. Merry Christmas.
Mr Mayor, it seems like a very straightforward New Year's resolution for you, that in your manifesto, and you have said repeatedly over the last 8 years, you will stand up for Londoners. And so far, we have seen absolutely zero evidence of that since this new government has come into power. So I'll ask once again, as a New Year's resolution, will you stand up for Londoners against this vindictive, socialist and nasty government?
Well, I've not heard the word socialist for years. At Labour Party conference, we have an assembly. Let me give you some examples. of the wins we've had from this government in just 5 months. Just some examples, Chair. Almost doubling of TfL capital funding. Confirmation, High Speed 2 will go to Euston. The announcement that Go Ahead will get funding for 1,200 electric buses in London. Oxford Street is going to be revitalised thanks to this government. More than 300 homes given the green light at Cockfosters stations because of this government. £100 million top-up in the affordable housing programme from the government for 25-26 thanks to this government. This government finally banning zombie knives and machetes promised by 5 Home Secretaries never delivered. A 34% increase in the grant we received for national and international capital city. A white paper with more devolution to London. £63 billion secured in an investment summit, at least £2 billion coming to London. The Environment and Energy Department talking about a single settlement for retrofit, really important to us getting to net zero. A £1 billion settlement next year, potentially, towards the Warm Homes programme.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, this wasn't the question.
Well, he wants a list of the wins we've got from the government.
The question was about him standing up to the government rather than being their parrot. You know, I'll allow you one more chance, Mr. Mayor. Will you? Oh, I know it's pantomime season in City Hall. Will you stand up for Londoners? Will you stand up for Londoners against this government? Yes or no?
One more chance.
Well, talking of parrots, he's something out of Monty Python in relation to.
Oh no, I'm
doing.
not.
I mean, listen, look, I'm not going to respond to that. We've had one clown for 8 years, and he's now a former Prime Minister. I'm not going to repeat any pantomime stuff here. What I will say is London has had their say on May the 2nd. The country had their say on July the 4th, and thank God for that.
So, no, he won't stand up for Londoners. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Assembly Member Hall, please.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, and may I wish you and your family a really happy and safe time this Christmas, and also to all of those celebrating Hanukkah, which is at the same time. Now, I'm going to go back to policing. As you know, it's my passion, so if I can just take you back so that we can look towards your New Year's resolutions. Just to confirm, you are the London's Police and Crime Commissioner. And in the last year, you've allowed knife crime to reach a record high. You've overseen a 30% increase in gun crime and a 10% increase in robbery, a shocking 82.5% increase in business robbery. You failed to recruit a single one of the 1,300 officers you promised to hire in your election campaign. You've failed to secure any extra funding for policing from the new Labour government. You've appointed a new Deputy Mayor for Policing, who is a very nice woman, but who has no background whatsoever in policing. And you've lost the trust of our heroic firearms officers by failing to back them over the Chris Carver case. In this year alone, more than 1 million offences have been reported. At least 60,000 phones, which we talked about earlier, have been stolen, with nearly 400,000 thefts in total. The Met remains in special measures and a worse Peel inspection than last year. Trust and confidence in the Met has not improved. So will you make it a New Year's promise again this year to Londoners that you will get a grip on crime and start to actually make them safer?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for your question. Thanks for your best wishes. I know they're sincere, and I'll respond accordingly. Happy Christmas to your families as well. Look, crime is the one issue that keeps me up at night time. I've met both in my 12 years as a councillor, in my 11 years as a Member of Parliament, and now in my 9th year as Mayor, too many victims of crime. I've seen the impact it has on those who are the victims of crime, but even worse, on bereaved families. It's a really serious issue. What we've sought to do over the last 8 years, notwithstanding the awful legacy, the £1.2 billion worth of cuts in police and budget, youth clubs closing down, to do this very simply by being tough on crime and supporting the police, and being tough on the complex causes of crime. And how we've been tough on crime. We've given this police an almost doubling of funding compared to the previous mayor. We now fund the police to the tune of £1.148 billion. The amount of money going to the police service from City Hall is now 25%. It was 19% when I first became mayor. That's 1,300 more police officers funded by City Hall, and we fund also 500 more PCSOs. That's really important because the police have lost officers, staff and buildings over the last 14 years. At the same time, we've been tough on the complex causes of crime. I don't think crime is inevitable. I think it's preventable with good intervention using a public health approach. So because of our funding, youth workers have been re-employed, not just in youth clubs, but in police stations and A&Es. We've made sure we're doing outreach work. 500,000 young people have had positive opportunities because of our investment, and it's reaping benefits. notwithstanding a population rising by more than 1 million, homicides down in London, those young people injured with a knife down in London, burglaries down in London, gun crime down in London, lethal barrels discharged down in London. According to the ONS, not my figures, the ONS, you're less likely to be the victim of violence in London than the rest of England and Wales. According to the ONS, you're less likely to be the victim of injury in London than the rest of England and Wales. You compare London to other global cities, Paris, Madrid, Barcelona, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Toronto, you're less likely to be the victim of homicide in London per capita than those cities. But it's still too high. It's still too high. And that's why I'm determined to work with a new government to make sure we make progress on this issue. And any support the member can give, with good ideas in a collegiate way, I'm more than happy to listen to. Because it's really important that we resolve to reduce crime even further. And I'm really proud of the progress made. We've got to do more.
Well, it's funny you should say you're listening. Would that the Commissioner was made to come to our committee, because lots of us from very different parties with very different views would like to express those, but because we can't, because they're not there. You've just said that crime is preventable. Then that must make you even more deeply ashamed of your record on crime, because it's absolutely appalling. There have been 64,000 burglaries across London in the last year, but just 3,700 have actually got solved. That's not even 6%. Given how few cases are being solved and how few criminals are actually being brought to justice, do you agree that we've effectively decriminalised large numbers of offences taking place in our city?
Well, I'm sure she'll welcome burglary being down by 22% since I became mayor. 22% reduction in burglary in London since I became mayor. Still too high, though. And that's why, over the last 8 years, while I've been lobbying for more resources from the government, that side I've been quiet. Well, I've been calling out the consequences of austerity. That side have been quiet. When I've been explaining that if you pull funding from youth clubs and youth centres and councils, don't be surprised if young people get sucked into crime, that side have stayed silent. When we set up England and Wales' first VRU in London, welcomed by most members of the Assembly, not by that side. So Londoners will see the crocodile tears coming from the Conservatives. They can play knockabout stuff, but the country knows. We've had a government obsessed by austerity for the last 14 years. We know the consequences of that across public services, not least, unfortunately, victims of crime.
Don't you dare say they're crocodile tears, because we care. We do care. You say robbery is down, 82.5% increase in business robbery. Don't you dare say we don't care, because we damn well do care. It's you that doesn't appear to care because you're not doing anything about it. In the last 12 months, sexual offences were up 6%. 125,000 domestic abuse offenders were recorded. The positive outcome for the rates for these crimes was less than 10%. That is absolutely appalling, and let me assure you, my colleagues do care, and this is why we constantly tried to hold you to account on this.
Crocodile tears and mock anger.
Yeah, it just shows what you know, doesn't it? Perhaps you should actually take a view on what you say every year. Your most important thing is actually keeping Londoners safe. Those of us that look at the statistics, it shows a very different picture. Yesterday we had a meeting talking about the police and crime plan that's been in place for nearly 4 years. It's a disgrace. There are so many things in there that show how badly you are doing. We care, which is why we keep bringing this up. You clearly don't care, because whenever you're questioned on it, you talk about a different subject or you refer to crocodile tears. Well, let me tell you, we do care. And I hope you damn well listen and next year do something positive. That should be your New Year's resolution, to actually make London safer, because it's an absolute disaster out there at the moment. Thank you, Chairman.
I'm not sure if you want me to respond to that. I think the members are, shown who she is by that.
Assembly Member Bailey, please.
Thank you, Chair, and happy Hanukkah to all those celebrating Hanukkah. Happy Christmas to all of Assembly members and the Mayor and your families as well. I hope you have a safe and fun and wonderful time. Mr. Mayor, let's just quickly talk about policing for just 1 second. I don't think it's fair, Mayor, to say that we don't care. You're looking at in me, someone who's been a youth worker for over 35 years. One of my colleagues here used to work for a project that was funded by the VRU. So while we disagree politically, that's fine, but I don't think it's right to cast aspersions like that, because it simply isn't true. Mayor, the police commissioner made it quite clear that the funding gap was £450 million that he would need to provide the services that he's been asked to provide by you, us and everybody else. Can you confirm to me that you've made it your New Year's resolution to ask the government for that amount of money to fill that gap? Have you done that?
Well, can I wish, Lord Bailey, you and your family a very happy Christmas and a really peaceful New Year. Look, I think what Londoners want to see is evidence of the care you're talking about by the lobbying over the last 14 years. Successive Home Secretaries, successive Chancellors, successive Prime Ministers, many on close first-name terms with members of the Assembly, often, going to parties together and all the rest of it and stuff. We would hope to see evidence of the lobbying for additional funds for youth clubs, for youth workers, for police officers, for police stations, and evidence of that lobbying being successful in relation to the lobbying. That will be evidence of care. What Londoners have seen is, the Met Police budget cut by £1.2 billion over the last 14 years. There's a change of government. Suddenly they care about budgets for the police. Suddenly they want 14 years' worth of cuts, reversed in one budget. We've had for the last 8 years lobbying for additional funds for the National and International Capital Cities grant. Within 5 months, what has this government done? They've increased the NIC by 34%. Within 1 year, a 34% record increase. London hasn't seen an increase of that number for more than 10 years, never in my experience as... that's evidence of a Home Secretary that cares.
Mr. Mayor,
and the evidence of lobbying.
Mr. Mayor,
and now he's interrupting.
Mr. Mayor, you know I'm under time pressure. I asked you, had you asked for the £450 million that the Met Police Commissioner made quite clear that he needed? That's all I asked you. I asked you that. And just on your lobbying piece, we've always supported the lobbying efforts from here around the capital cities budget in particular and about giving the Met more money in general. That's why I'm asking this question.
I'm really pleased he said the last thing. Look, so the evidence is the Assembly, the Tory Assembly's care, right? So they've been lobbying. But there's been and now his current leader is jumping in to defend him.
Neil, don't. Please. Okay. Mr. Mayor,
let me respond. I'm not sure who's helping who, Chair.
Listen, Mr. Mayor, I just want to be clear. Everybody knows what you're doing, right, and you're filibustering and all the rest of that. But I'm asking you a serious question. Remember, I'm interested in policing because I've been a youth worker for 30-odd years, and I watch people of my community get murdered on the regular. That's why I'm asking you. The Met Commissioner asked for 450 million quid. Did you ask for it? That's all I'm asking. Did you ask for that money? That's all.
Let me respond to the last two questions if I can, Chair. So the assertion is that the Tories care. There's been zero increase in NIC over the last 8 years. That must mean that the Tory government didn't care because they didn't increase NIC over the last 8 years. Well, let me tell you, compare and contrast. This government have increased the NIC by 34%. Evidence both of the Mayor caring because he's lobbied for it, and the Home Secretary, a Labour one,
did you ask for the 400? Come on, Sadiq. But seriously, you've said that twice. We get it. You've made a joke. The Tories don't care whether you've got your point across. Did you, in your role as Mayor of London, ask for the £450 million that the Met Commissioner said he needed? That's what I'm asking. Just say yes or no.
We have been lobbying, both the Commissioner and myself, for additional resources for City Hall. Both the Commissioner and myself accept you're not going to get in one budget a reversal of 14 years of cumulative cuts. And so both of us, not only have we been lobbying for additional funds for London for 25-26, but we're also going to be working together to put the Met Police Service on a long-term sustainable footing in the SR that will take place in spring of next year.
Did you ask for £450 million?
The Home Office are well aware of the shortfall.
Did you ask for £450 million?
The Home Office are well aware, which is why I lobbied for and asked for the gap to be closed by the
Could we
government.
any correspondence you had asking for that amount of money, or any amount of
I'm more than happy, Chair, for any correspondence that's normally made public to be made public.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Let's move on. Let's talk about housing. Another New Year's resolution that I really hope that you can fulfil. You regularly, for years, asked the previous government for £4.9 billion annually extra for your funding budget. They eventually gave you 8.82 in funding over the last period. Have you asked the current government for that amount of money?
I think the member may be conflating the budget and the SR. Let me just explain to him the way it works.
No, please don't. I'm not conflating either of those things. I do not want you to answer. I want you. Let me make the question simple.
Please, yeah.
I'll make it simple.
Assembly member.
Have you asked your government for £4.9 billion for housing annually? Have you? Yes or no?
Okay, let me take him through it. So the way it works, Chair, is you have budgets every year. And then you have a multi-year announcement from the government around the comprehensive spending review. So this government was elected in July last year, and they had a budget for 1 year for 25-26 announced. The Affordable Homes Programme that I think he's referring to, but I'm not sure. The Affordable Homes Programme is for a number of years, and we've had 2 of those because I've been in there for a number of years. Now, the Affordable Homes Programme isn't announced until later on next year. So I think his question is, although I'm not sure, you can't ever really be, are we going to be asking for a significant sum of money when it comes to the next Affordable Homes Programme, which is around the SR time? The answer is yes. And the good news is, notwithstanding the SR some time away, in this year we've got an additional £100 million. We weren't expecting. That goes into the Affordable Homes Programme 2021 to 2026. That's £100 million we weren't expecting. Because of our successful lobbying, we've got it.
To be clear, because the mayor has been so patronising and hasn't taken me seriously, he has been patronising, Len, come on. Seriously, he has been. He's been enjoying being patronising. I'm very clear that you asked for £4.9 billion every year additionally. That's what you said London needed annually to achieve the housing that it needed to build. I just want to know how much you expect to get from the government. What is your ambition? What have you written for? What have you asked for? When you talk about the affordable housing project, how much have you asked for? Not how much you hope to get.
When it comes to the submission next year, I'll be making those public and we'll be asking for billions of pounds from the government.
How many billions of pounds?
He's asking me to preempt a submission I may make in June. I'm more than happy to make it public in June or to make the submission.
Look, housing is our biggest challenge apart from crime. We just want a clear answer for you. We want to know that you have the ambition. You constantly badger our government for money. Fair enough, I get it, it's your job. But we are worried now that you're not going to stand up for London because you don't want to embarrass the government because they won't give you as much as you used to ask for. So are you going to ask the question, are you going to ask for the same amount that you've always asked for to achieve the kind of housing numbers we need in London? Or are you going to not represent London, not stand up for London and ask for less?
Well, the thesis of his question would make more sense
as a New Year's resolution.
Thank you, Assembly Member.
I think lots of mulled wine's been drunk this morning, Chair. I think the thesis of his question would make more sense had we had nothing from the government in the last 5 months when it comes to housing. When it comes to housing alone, we've had the green light on more than 300 homes at Cockfosters Station, paused by the previous government. We've had a top-up of the Affordable Homes Programme of £100 million. We've had the Secretary of State lifting the restrictions placed on the previous London plan.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
We've had an assurance that the infrastructure levy is so important.
I'm going to have to interrupt you because my time.
It's going to be removed.
I need to end there. I'm sure we can pick this up in paperwork afterwards. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Assembly Member Prince, please.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, and Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you and your family
as well.
So, will you take this opportunity to promise Londoners that one of your New Year resolutions will be to get London moving? Under your mayoralty, London buses are slower, less safe and less reliable. A recent London Travel Watch report made it clear that the bus network requires urgent improvement.
Thank you for your question. As you know, buses are really personal to me. I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but my father was a bus driver. And that's why I'm really pleased we've managed to secure from this government, not just almost doubling capital support for TfL, and a lot of that will go into buses, but specifically the government's announced funding for that they'll be investing £500 million in zero-emission capable buses with Go-Ahead, which will benefit London as well. But he's right. There is an issue about buses not going as fast as they should. And if a customer can't be confident that a bus will get him or her from A to B within the minutes they predict, they're not going to use the bus. And so it's really important to make our buses more reliable and more predictable when it comes to those journeys. So a number of things we've started doing is recognising that often when roads are dug up by utility companies, that leads to delay. It can't be beyond the wit of us to organise that for it to be done better. So we're introducing lane rental powers to councils. 95% of roads are council to sort this out, so there's more coordination. So there's a consequence if a utility company digs up a road and not proper action is taken. We also think one of the ways to speed up buses is by having more bus lanes that are reserved just for buses and motorcycles and bicycles as well. That will mean reserves lane for buses that gets them going faster. He's been a really good advocate of the Superloop. One of the reasons why that's been so successful is because they're going faster, right? Because they stop at fewer bus stops and they have reserved bus lanes. But he's right to raise this issue because it is one of the biggest complaints I hear about our buses, and we're determined to, in a safe way, speed them up.
Well, thank you for that. We would like a Superloop in Havering if you can manage it. It would be nice.
On that, can I say we will be consulting on the Superloop to come to Havering, and we'll make sure the members probably consulted on that.
That'd be nice. So, as you say, the speeds have dropped significantly under your mayoralty. But also, the very worrying thing is that in spite of your efforts on Vision Zero, we're still seeing around 50 people a month being put in hospital by buses. What are you doing on that aspect?
Let me deal with both those issues, which are both really important issues, which I know constituents must raise with him as they raise with me. On the first issue, look, at this time of year, when all of us are ordering stuff to be delivered at home, it's just worth reminding ourselves those things are delivered in vehicles, which cause pressure for traffic on the roads, which is one of the reasons why traffic goes less fast, because more and more of us now are delivering stuff to be sent home. So logistics, the increase of that is causing some problems on our roads. In relation to road safety, my understanding is last year, I've got the figures in the Raj, I can send them to him. We've had one of the safest years since records began in relation to deaths and serious injuries, still too high. And that's why we're going to redouble efforts to bring them down even lower. We know post-pandemic there's been some nervousness of passengers in relation to holding railings and so forth. We're trying to make sure people feel confident in relation to safety on all public transport, and we're determined to reduce even further incidents where people get hurt using public transport.
And finally, Mr. Mayor, can we have can you put pressure on your team, please, to give us a final decision on the Woodford Avenue bus lane? This was something that was put in without any consultation, was then taken out to help Wes win his election, and it's still there, but there's been we can't seem to get anything out of your department as to whether or not the lane is going to remain or not remain. Can you just put some pressure on?
Can the Assembly member address the original question about New Year's resolutions?
Well, would it be your resolution to get us a decision on that, please?
Chair, the member's always assiduous in raising stuff with me offline that are constituency issues. I'll make sure I take this away offline and respond to him accordingly. I just don't know the details. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Assembly Member Best, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, and Merry Christmas and congratulations on your successful event on Monday. I know using Football for Good is something that hopefully we can agree on. Moving on, you'll have seen in the news this week Liz Kendall's decision to not award the compensation agreement to the WASPI women, and you follow a long line of Labour leaders and high-profile politicians that have stood side by side and said you support the WASPI women campaign. In fact, the image that I couldn't show you under the rules of this chamber would show that you met with them at a conference and said, keep up the good fight. Is it your New Year's resolution to continue to tell WASPI women to keep up the good fight, or do you agree with this government?
No, I think they should keep up the good fight. My understanding is that the government would like to do this, but because of the massive black hole left by the previous government and the awful inheritance They simply can't find the money to do so. I mean, every year, Chair, every year, there's a gap of money coming in and money going out of £22 billion. And so the government's got a really tough task in relation to balancing the books. And we know because, you know, unlike the previous government, this government have supported the campaign that their sympathies lie with the WASPI women, as indeed do mine.
Actually, Mr Mayor, that's a little far from the truth, because what the Chancellor has come out and said is actually she's kind of gone on to say that people did have enough time to know this and that she doesn't actually support the cause. It's been less about the money and more about the full reason of doing it. But on the money in itself, I think I've told you previously, I won't go into it again, the state that this government inherited much been improved from what the last Conservative government inherited, Lib Dem coalition in 2010. But also to reflect on this £22 billion black hole that nobody's seen and nobody will be shown. And even the OBR said in their report that there is nothing in their review to legitimise the £22 billion. So with that in mind, how will you be resolving in the new year to support WASPI women, if that is something that you still agree and you disagree with this government, as you say? Well,
I'm really happy to talk about national politics. Look, so the previous government claimed to care about those who were victims of the post office scandal. Where was the money to compensate them? No money set aside to compensate the victims of the post office scandal. The previous government claimed to care about those who were contaminated with
We're actually talking about you and what you resolve to do in the new year. Sorry, but the Mayor was confused, so I was just redirecting him to the question. What will you be doing in the new year? Will you be supporting the WASPI women, or will you be supporting the government?
So just like with the WASPI women, the government set aside no money, the previous government, for the victims of the post office scandal and contaminated blood. What this government's done, and I fully support, is they found the money for those who are victims of the post office scandal, notwithstanding the difficult circumstances of their inheritance. They found the money to support those who are the victims of contaminated blood. They've also, by the way, are addressing the Windrush scandal, another legacy of the previous government. They've got to find this £22 billion in relation to the black hole left by the government every year, by the way, not just 1 year, one-off, every year. They've got to fund the £22 billion. And I know, because the WASPI Women's campaign's been, really, really loud and clear, that many women suffered as a consequence of this. I think she's referring to the Ombudsman's report, which was quoted by the Chancellor.
I think you've had enough time to do the filibuster thing. So shall we move on to the question? I'll repeat it. Will you resolve in the new year to stand by WASPI women as you said you would previously, or will you be agreeing with the government and saying that this is a lost cause?
I think it's possible to support the victims of the scandal in relation to the WASPI women, but also recognise the horrible inheritance this government's had from the previous lot. £22 billion black hole, public services on its knees, private sector on its knees, low growth, high interest rates, and a situation that no government would like to inherit, but this government has, and they're doing a good job fixing the foundations of both public services and the economy.
Well, if you think what this government inherited was bad, imagine what the coalition government walked into in 2010. But when you say it's possible to support people by not supporting them, that just lacks entirely any integrity. And it's something that increasingly we're seeing with your mayoralty, whether it's telling people that you have no plans to expand ULEZ and doing it 10 months later, whether it's saying that you only found out you were going to Taylor Swift the night before and misdeclaring those concert tickets, you did that, whether it's not publicising your diary, which you said you would, but then you do it about a year later than you should, or whether it's this, standing, and in this post you've got 4,000 people liking this. This is an issue that affects 3 million people. It's buying votes, essentially, to stand by them and say, I support your cause, and then say, actually, no, I don't, once you're in the position to stand up for them.
It's always good to receive advice from people about how to win elections, particularly from
I've won every election I've stood in, so you can always listen to me if you like.
Particularly from a party that's lost 3 in a row in terms of the London mayoralty. I'm quite clear in relation to the resolutions I've got for the new year. I'll carry on serving this great city of ours to make it healthier, to make it safer, to make it greener, and to make it more prosperous.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And it is possible to stand in elections. I have, and won without misleading people. I think that you should do the same. No matter your position, if you told people you're going to do something for them, I think you should.
I'm really happy, Chair, to respond to that question.
That's OK. It's not a question, thanks. It's just some helpful advice for the Christmas period.
Let's move on to Assembly Member Duval, please.
It's a bit rich, isn't it, when people go hark back about legacies and inheritances that they received from a Labour government in 2010, when actually the period of the coalition government induced austerity measures that quite clearly didn't need to be taken, and the legacy that we're still dealing with at this present occasion. You rightly said today about the Metropolitan Police. Our troubles began in 2010, and that's why there are structural problems in terms of settlements, and that's where we have. Well done, and thank you for the work you've done with the Metropolitan Police in terms of achieving a breakthrough on the NIC funding. It was very important. Actually, this lot said they supported us. I wonder whether they did. Because the reason why, and it's a question, if you can cast your mind back to the budgets that you've made in this Assembly, is it correct to say that the Tories would say that they would defend policing, but they would dismantle every other aspect of the GLA and the TfL and TfL's budgets to fund it?
If Assembly members could remember, they've got to tie in the original question somehow, however tenuous. Yes, but thank you. Mr. Mayor, please respond.
I mean, if the Conservatives understand that the public have seen through them, then I just give up. I mean, the reason why the public knows these are crocodile tears is what Sulaiman Deval has referred to. The evidence over the last 14 years, and by the way, it's worth reminding ourselves, because the next questioner, it was a coalition government. Austerity wasn't just a Tory whim. It was designed, the architects were both the Conservative Party and the Liberal Democrats. In 2010, it was a choice they made not to go for growth after the global financial crash, but to go for austerity. And the audacity, they're now complaining about some of the consequences of the austerity. And by the way, just like the WASPI women weren't compensated by the previous government, they're in power for 14 years, by the way. Post office victims, blood-contaminated victims, you mentioned public services and the police. Now, within 5 months, all this rectified by the new Labour government, notwithstanding the awful inheritance. Now, they chuckle and they heckle and they chunter and they interrupt because they don't like it. But the country's seen through it, and we saw that on July the 4th. With the worst ever result the Conservatives received since in their history, 121 MPs in Parliament. The margin of victory on the mayoral elections on May the 2nd were the biggest they've ever been in the first round between the winning candidate, that's me by the way, and the second candidate, I'm surprised we're not counting Binface, but the Tories. And so there's a reason for that, is because people have seen through it, and they're crocodile tears, and it's mock anger, and the public aren't stupid.
Assembly Member Desai, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to apologise for repeating much of what you have already said on the policing front. Why? Because it's important that the reality of what has happened over the last 14 years is not challenged by a false narrative. And what is the reality? The reality is that the austerity of the last 14 years was extremely damaging for the Metropolitan Police. Cuts of up to £1 billion. Cuts have consequences. This government announced...
Assembly Member, please relate your question to the question.
Hear me out, Chair. The government announced this week that police forces across the country, including the Met, will receive real terms funding uplift of 3% for the next year, which is the largest funding increase in over a decade. The Met will receive a further £65 million, following the 34% increase to the National and International Capital Cities grant, the first increase to the grant in 5 years, something that both you and I have lobbied for over the last few years. I've brought many resolutions to the Assembly about the Capital Cities grant. Mr. Mayor, do you agree with me that we now finally have a government that understands the importance of investing in policing?
I mean,
some order, please.
The chutzpah at Tories calling out a Labour member for the way he asked the question. We've had an hour of crocodile tears and mock anger. So this government, in just 5 months, has started the process of fixing the foundations in our public services, and the member's spot on. We've lobbied every year for an increase in NIC. The Home Office themselves recognise there's a shortfall. They've done for the last 10 years. Lo and behold, the first budget this government has, the first time we get a chance to work with the Home Office that believes in police and the Home Secretary that believes in the importance of supporting the police, we get an increase of, as he said, more than 34% in NIC funding. Shows the difference having a pro-police, pro-communities government has working with the Mayor. And I'm hoping it's the start of a process which sees the police being put on a good, solid, long-term footing in advance of the SR that's going to be taking place in spring next year.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The next question is regarding the Met Police budget, and it's from Assembly Member Roberts.
Thanks for your question. Bearing down on crime and keeping Londoners safe is my top priority as Mayor, which is why I've always worked hard to protect and increase investment in the Met Police Service. This year we've made a record investment in policing from City Hall of £1.148 billion. In my 2024-2025 budget, I invested an additional £151 million in policing and crime prevention. This included an additional £54.1 million of council tax funding and £34.4 million of business rates funding. I've in fact doubled the amount of funding for policing compared to when I first became Mayor. The previous government severely underfunded policing in London, with government funding having been cut by around £1.2 billion over the past decade. The proportion of the Met Police Service budget provided from City Hall has increased since I became Mayor from 19% in 2016 to actually 27% in the budget for 24-25, showing my support and the extent to which previous governments failed to adequately fund the police. But this week we had some good news from the new government. In 2025-2026, the Home Office will provide an uplift of £63.4 million to the Met Police Service as part of the National and International Capital City Grant, NIC. That's an increase of more than 34%. This is the biggest uplift to the NIC in over a decade, with the previous government refusing to increase the funding despite a significant increase in protest and other activity in London in recent years. In August this year, the Met Police Service presented its new strategic planning framework to MOPAC, a comprehensive approach designed to link MPS resources and funding to workforce performance and outcomes. This approach has allowed MOPAC to comment early on spend reduction options put forward by the MPS, meaning feedback was more efficient and effective. I'll publish my draft budget on the 15th of January and look forward to answering the Assembly's questions on it on the 23rd of January. The budget submissions from MOPAC and other GLA group organisations have been published, and I'm consulting Londoners on these before I take any decisions. I continue calls to the government to fund the MPS properly, including for the unique responsibilities of policing a capital city. I look forward to continuing working together with this government as we build a safer London for everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I take the opportunity to wish the compliments of the festive season, not just to you, but to all Assembly members present and to officers, of course. Just regarding the last hour, I mean, anybody who may have thought that 50 minutes of constant Conservative questions may have been dull, well, they would have been right, to be honest. And the only thing to make it even more dull was bloody chiming in from the Assembly Member Duval and the Assembly Member Desai. But then maybe we can try and get on with the programme now. Because...
Dream world.
Sorry, I wanted to get that off the chest. Will your budget tackle the shortfall which the Metropolitan Police Commissioner is highlighting, the need to cut 2,300 officers, the need to cut 400 staff? What measures within your budget are being taken to try to address, at least in part, those cuts, which will be damaging to London?
Yeah, I'm not sure we can close the gap completely. I mean, what the Commissioner has done is articulate his frustration at the cumulative impact of 14 years of cuts, and he's done it in a more transparent way for the framework reasons that I've set out. You know, I think everyone accepts, even the harshest critics, one budget can't undo 14 years' worth of budgets, but it can start making some progress. So I think there'll still be a gap. There'll still be a need for an amelioration of some of the consequences that the Commissioner, in a very transparent way, set out, which I think is good for him to do. We've got to then work towards persuading the government when it comes to the SR in spring to try and close that gap further. But it is a big gap. And by the way, I just share with him that colleagues across the country are also articulating the consequences of 14 years' worth of cuts, and we've got to make sure that when the government makes more progress fixing the foundations of public services, we get more investment in those public services that could do with it.
Thank you. One of the services which is being earmarked for cuts is the Royal Parks Police, and I should declare an interest, by the way, as the trustee of the Royal Parks. Bushy Park and Richmond Park have got a small unit of just 12 officers which provide 7 days a week, 2 shifts all year round. And they are instrumental in making sure that the parks are kept safe as possible and to ensure that there are very low crime rates within the parks. Will you make representations to the Metropolitan Police Commissioner about this particular cut, which would see the end of 150 years of Royal Parks policing in our Royal Parks?
Look, can I thank him for his question and the sincerity in which he asked it? I know he knows the parks very well, not just from his role as the leader of the council, but also his interest in those parks. So what the Commissioner has done is set up potential options, and he's consulting Londoners, and so I'd encourage him to respond. He knows also the Commissioner has been quite transparent about the impact of mounted police and the dog section and so forth, and so he's got difficult choices to make in relation to prioritising the finite budget he's got. I'll make sure, Chair, that the comments made today are passed on to the Commissioner, but I'd encourage him also to respond directly to some of the Commissioner's tried to be quite candid with the Londoners about some of the things he's considering, so and the reason is for this, to give people opportunity to respond, and I'd encourage him to do so.
Thank you. Similarly, one of the other areas of concern is the removal of dedicated schools officers from school, which some forces are already starting to take the decision to remove them and redeploy those schools officers into safer neighbourhood teams. Would you similarly encourage people to make representations regarding that particular cut?
Yeah, can I just thank for the second part of his question in particular. So what the Commissioner is not doing is saying, those officers will disappear into thin air and we'll save the money that way. What he's saying is that, by the way, not every school takes a school officer, that one of the options he has is to pivot those towards public protection roles, the neighbourhood roles that he's talking about. And so that's one of the options he has. He'll be aware that actually operational issues matters for the Commissioner, but obviously he takes on board the views of experts in a local community about where they'd like to see those policing assets placed. And just remind him, in addition to a pan-London approach, there are specific approaches in communities, so not just the pan-London point that the member raises, but also in his own community, if, for example, he'd rather those officers be used in neighbourhood policing. That's a strong point worth making.
Thank you. Just one final question is that the Met Police Commissioner recently confirmed that they made their conclusions on the estate strategy and that they need over £1 billion over a number of years in order to commit to the estate strategy. Where are you with the funding for that?
So one of the things that we're looking into is, because of the revenue challenges we have, is it possible to borrow for capital? He'll know as a leader of a council that the rules in relation to borrowing and stuff. So that would free up cash for police officers and the other issues that Londoners care about. I think we'll be in a position to respond to that when it comes to the budget process early next year, if he's bear with us.
Okay. And I did say that was the final question, but this is the final question. As the Met has made its conclusions on the estate strategy, do you think we might get a chance to have a look at the thing?
I've got it. I've not read them yet myself, so I won't mind having a read as well. But so yeah, as soon as I get the frustration, honestly, I do.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Assembly Member Duval, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and welcoming the question answered by being asked by the member. In all these settlements and awards that we receive from central government, behind this is fundamentally about some real structural issues around how that funding is used. Isn't one of the issues and one of the pressures that we're facing is getting police officers to do their jobs in the right place? Warranted police officers being warranted police officers rather than doing support roles that can be done by non-police officers. Is that not one of the key issues that we got to get across? And is the second part of my question is, much that we've gone through this settlement phase now, having an eye on to the next settlement, isn't the real jewel on the crown for better policing, better outcomes in tackling crime, is about some of the flexibility that government could give us in terms of how they structure those awards back to us?
Look, as I heard Chair, the member ask his question, I can almost hear the Commissioner speaking in the voice of Mr. Member Deval, because his point has been is when he took over the Met Police Service, he's realised how bent out of shape it is because of the consequences of previous government settlements. What do I mean by that? So often money is given to a police force and it's ring-fenced just for police officers. The PUP funding, that's the police uplift funding, is a good example. So the police can't use it on other things that are more sensible. So you've got a ridiculous situation where police officers, skilled, trained police officers, are on the front desk of police stations. Or police officers, trained police officers, who could be arresting people and doing other public protection stuff, are having to do stuff inside police buildings, frankly speaking, paperwork and admin, and back office stuff that could be done by other civilian staff, can free up police officers to do much more in the custody suite and so forth. And the frustration the Commissioner has is because the police service is bent out of shape because of underfunding and because unreasonably there's pressure on the Commissioner and Chief Constables to keep frontline officers and make police staff redundant. You can't make police officers redundant. That means the police service bent out of shape. What the Commissioner has tried to do is to free up more frontline police officers by having more civilian staff. Our ratio of police officers to public is the worst it's been in 14 years. You know, in 2010, roughly speaking, 4 police officers to 1,000 Londoners. Now it's about 3.7. But also the ratio of police officers to staff is way out of kilter in London. Across the country, it's roughly speaking, 2 police officers to 1 staff. Here it's about 4 to 1. That's out of kilter as well. And so we're trying to address that, and you're right, structural issues, but the real prize, you're right, is the SR in relation to a long-term capital settlement and revenue settlement, which means we can plan properly in relation to what is the optimal number of police officers, PCSOs, police staff, how much we invest in forensic, fridges that have enough space to have samples placed inside them, in technology, in tablets and so forth. It's really important. We've been starved for 14 years. That's why I use the phrase crocodile days, because where have they been for the last 14 years? Where have they been over the last 14 budgets? Where have they been calling for the SR missing in action?
And do you think then that the time's right to talk about? I've always been. I think police officers are important. Warranted police officers going about their right tasks, but also talking about other roles that crime fighters can face, non-police officers, about bringing that to bear to make sure that we're bearing down on some of these performance issues that have been raised earlier, and in a different way, and that some of that could be about mixed crime fighter teams that we've seen, and should we then be saying to government to release the rigidity of the spending awards to say that's what you get with flexibility? How do we give them the reassurance that we can deliver and further deliver and drive down crime in our communities?
Well, again, this is a compliment, not criticism. He sounds like the Commissioner, because what the Commissioner, from his experience, tells me is these mixed teams. I'll give you an example. The V100, which identifies the most dangerous 100, it's actually not 100, it can go above or below, people who are a danger to women. The analytics doesn't need to be done by police officers. Finding out who the most dangerous person is, looking at the data, intelligence doesn't need to be done by police officers, but working with police officers, they can make sure the right action is taken. Deciding when a domestic abuse protection order can be used, or GPS tagging, working probation. This can be done by, and I say this not in a crude way, cheaper staff, not necessarily police officers. And a warranted police officer is so useful for the reasons, the powers that brings with having a warrant. And so I've seen examples of great practice. I was in Croydon recently, good practice there, mixed teams. And it feels sometimes like the Commissioner's in a straitjacket because of the funding conditions from previous years. And what he's trying to do is trying to loosen that up to the point where, we trust, with the right oversight and the right support, the leadership of the Police Service to have the resources that they think works best for our city.
Thank you. Assembly Member Desai, did you indicate?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I know we already talked about drink spiking. However, your office has sent me data that shows that 2024 is already the highest year on record for drink spiking. I welcome that victims are feeling more willing to come forward. However, these numbers are revealing of just how big an increase how big of an issue drink spiking is. I know you're taking this very seriously. Will you be prioritising tackling the scourge of drink spiking in your upcoming budget?
Look, Chair, I'm aware of the work the members done in the past and the report you prepared in the past in relation to this issue. And I'm fully aware in this Christmas season, more of us will be going to bars and venues and pubs and so forth. And so it's really important that staff are aware in relation to spot what's going on in their premises. But also all of us are good citizens when it comes to people who may have their drinks spiked. Of course, enforcement is really important. The police take it incredibly seriously. There is advice out there in relation to what to do if you think you've been the victim of spiking or if you know somebody's involved in this. But it is a blight on you know, a good night out. And it's a real concern that particularly women have in relation to the dangers of being the victim of spiking. Men can be as well and have been well-documented cases. And that's why I'm really pleased that the government's given this the priority it deserves.
Thank you. Assembly Member Garbutt now, and the question is learning from Europe about drug harm reduction.
Thanks for your question. We know that the illegal drugs trade causes huge damage to our society. The drugs market itself is estimated to total £9.4 billion a year in England and Wales alone, whilst Dame Carol Black's independent review of drugs found the health, harm, cost of crime and impacts on wider society to total more than double that, at £19 billion a year. Partnership working is key to tackling the harms caused by drugs. That's why I've invested in interventions that take a more holistic approach to drug harm, such as investing £8 million in Project ADDA, which uses partnerships to addressing drug misuse in local communities. The programme builds on learning from other areas of England, where this approach was first piloted, including Blackpool and Hastings. It focuses on coordinated law enforcement activity alongside diversionary programmes using the criminal justice system to divert people away from offending. Our funding has enabled the rollout of Project ADDA across London. Other European cities are looking at adopting similar policies that see a public health-focused lens applied to harm reduction. These policies are aimed not only at safeguarding public health and human dignity, but also at fostering social justice. We established the London Drugs Forum to tackle drug harms across London. The forum takes a public health approach to drugs use and offending and recognises that tackling these harms requires whole system solutions. Enforcement agencies alone cannot address all the factors involved. The forum continues to hear from a range of stakeholders on best practice, both nationally and internationally. I understand that Member Garbutt was invited to observe the London Drugs Forum discussions on drug consumption rooms in November. As part of this, the forum heard about 200+ drug consumption rooms globally in 17 countries, including 11 European countries such as the Netherlands, France, Spain and Germany, and the benefits and challenges of implementing this approach. Drug check-in and testing services, which can improve knowledge about risk and facilitate harm reduction messaging and conversation with drug users, have also been discussed at the London Drugs Forum, as these have been widely adopted in Europe and are currently operated in Bristol, Manchester and London. The forum will continue to have discussions with experts and multi-agency partners on the strategic challenges and practices needed to effectively address drugs harm in London.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So 2 weeks ago, I took the train to Warsaw. I was invited by the Mayor of Amsterdam to take part in her Dealing with Drugs conference too. I don't know if you know, but the Mayor of Amsterdam regularly supports regulation of drugs and talks about it frequently, and it's absolutely inspiring to see her speak about that. So I spoke alongside the Mayor of Amsterdam, the Mayor of Brussels, the former Mayor of Prague, who are whistleblowing on this health crisis. We also heard from the UN Commissioner for Human Rights, who I thought you'd be interested to hear from, given your background in human rights, who said that the evidence is clear and the so-called war on drugs has failed completely and utterly, and drug policies that prioritise health and human rights are more effective and more humane. So it'd be great to have you as part of these conversations. So I wondered if you'd join these leaders across Europe and globally in talking about reducing drug harm.
Thanks, Chair. I'm a friend of the Mayor of Amsterdam. She's a great mayor, and I'm more than happy to talk about the dangers of drug harm. I'm more than happy to talk about the importance of diversion. Some of the work the London Drugs Forum doing is incredibly important. She's seen some of the pioneering stuff that's been undertaken within the parameters of the law. What we don't want is those who work in this area to inadvertently break the law, which is really important. I've got examples of international practice across the globe. Some has worked, some less so. But the status quo isn't working in relation to, I mentioned the financial cost of this, and she'll be aware some of the work the Drugs Commission is doing in relation to cannabis and the dangers that poses and so forth. So it is really important for us to have this conversation in a public forum to have these issues raised.
Brilliant, because it would be great for you to be speaking about that on a national level, because the focus on the conference was all about cities and the unique challenges that cities face. So the more that you can be doing to champion the change needed for London and the problems we're facing here, it would be, great to do that. The question I wanted to ask you is to understand how connected you are and how much you're hearing from people who are most affected by our dangerous drug laws. So the people who've lost family members. So there's a group called Anyone's Child, and it's parents and partners who've lost friends and family to the war on drugs. They talk really passionately about the need for drug reform, and I just wondered if this is a group that you'd be up for meeting with.
I'm not sure if I understand the victims of war on drugs. I'm not sure.
So they're people whose partners and children have died from drug use. A lot of them talk about the fact that the stigma related to drug use is the cause of their drug death, and the fact that they didn't have access to health treatment, or the fact that drugs are available in the way that they are and not through health professionals. So they are linked to the organisation Transform, which I know you're aware of, but it's a group of parents and family members who talk about their experiences of their children and of their partners. And I just wondered if it's a group you'd be up for meeting.
Chair, more than happy for Kaya and Tom, who co-chaired the London Drugs Forum, to meet with the various groups and invite them along to a London Drugs Forum meeting to have those conversations, because those voices should be heard.
It'd be great if you could meet with them as well. I'm sure they'd like to hear from you as well, but I do welcome the opportunity for them to go to the Drugs Forum. And just on cannabis, so you mentioned earlier the Drug Commission. You said to me in July that you'd be disappointed if it wasn't out by the end of the year, which we know is about 12 days' time. And I'm concerned to read in the Police and Crime Plan, it says it might be here in the term of the Police and Crime Plan, which is obviously up to 2029. So I just wondered if the Drug Commission is going to be out soon.
I am disappointed, and it'll be out next year.
OK, thank you. And Merry Christmas to you and your family.
And to you as well. Thanks, Zoe.
Anyone's Child is an organisation worth meeting, and I would recommend to the Mayor that he meets. I think it's about time for a break of 10 minutes. So back here, 11:35. Welcome back, members. The next question is in the name of Assembly Member Moema, and it concerns supporting private renters.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for your question. We recently launched a consultation on our proposals for key worker live-in rent homes, detailing how we'll make the rent control homes set out in my manifesto a reality. London's housing crisis demands wide-ranging action, with City Hall, boroughs, housing associations and market developers working with government to build more homes, in particular more affordable homes, and to improve the private rented sector. Key worker live-in rent homes will play a part by providing a form of intermediate housing for those who keep our city running. Intermediate homes aren't an alternative to social rented homes. My London Plan and my Affordable Homes programme both strongly encourage social rent, and I'm working with the government to ensure future funding does too. Intermediate housing sits alongside social rented housing and helps households on ordinary incomes below £67,000 annually who are unlikely to secure social housing and can afford to pay more, but who are struggling with high private rents, especially after recent increases. While I know that many key workers need social housing, many others would fall into the intermediate housing category, and key worker live-in rent homes will be for key workers in that position. Key workers include nurses, postal workers, care workers, public transport drivers, teachers, foods producers and sellers, childminders and refuse collectors, amongst other professions. Housing costs means it's increasingly difficult to recruit and retain people in these vital roles. I want these homes to help address that challenge. We're proposing rents at 40% of an average key worker's net household income, with checks to ensure these don't exceed 70% of market rents. The resulting rents could save key workers as much as £600 a month on private rents. To deliver on the ambition for our initial 6,000 key worker live-in rent homes, I want to work with the affordable and private sectors to ensure they can get behind this new model. Unless they're confident it's viable to build them, these homes won't help key workers. So I've proposed an approach to rents that means prospective investors, developers and providers can readily calculate income over time.
Thank you very much, Mayor Khan, and along with everybody else, I want to wish you and your family a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and to those celebrating Hanukkah, a Happy Hanukkah. So I was listening with interest to what was discussed earlier, and I'm really glad to see that we are refocusing and making sure that we're delivering on this manifesto commitment around supporting private renters. And you and I both agree that private renters, the sector as a whole, needs a lot more protection. And I wanted to understand how you feel about the current progress of the Renters' Rights Bill passing through Parliament. You've already mentioned the 100 million extra affordable homes programme, and I'm really pleased to see that we've got a share of the £233 million to tackle homelessness here in London. So it'd be really great to hear what you think.
Well, thanks for your question. The member will be aware that I think there are 2.7 million Londoners now renting, so it's a huge issue. And even with the best will in the world, we're not going to have a supply of new affordable homes meeting the demand. So for the foreseeable future, there'll be record numbers renting and renting in the private sector as well. The Renters' Rights Bill has really strengthened the original bill published by the previous government, and actually this government's going to carry it through. The biggest difference, I think, is going to be when they get rid of Section 21. Section 21 allows landlords to evict a tenant who may be questioning damp and mould, who may be questioning why the rent's gone up so much for no reason at all. By removing that, it will give tenants security, but also the ability to challenge issues, for example, around unreasonable hikes or damp and mould. Additionally, there are more provisions in the legislation in relation to an ombudsman to support those who are in the private rented sector, and a national landlords register, really important in relation to transparency and knowing who's good and who's bad. Other changes she'll be aware of the awful case of Awab Hisak, the 2-year-old who died from damp and mould exposure in Rochdale and Greater Manchester. The changes announced by the previous government just bit social rented homes. Well, the changes this government's bringing will affect all homes. So there's an obligation to make sure the home is fit for purpose. So there are lots of rooms for improvement in relation to security, in relation to tenure, and our 6,000 potential rent control homes will deal with the issue of affordability as well, which is really important.
Thank you so much for that, and I'm really pleased to hear all of that progress, particularly around the extension of Awab's law to the private rented sector through the bill. I wondered, though, if you might expand a little on how we're going to deliver the 6,000 rent-controlled homes. You've talked about proof of concept and giving comfort to private and social sectors around rents, which is really important to make sure that's sustainable. But just more broadly, that delivery of affordable homes, as you know and everybody else here knows, temporary accommodation is now the #1 spend of any local authority in our capital. So we need to make sure that we're bringing those costs down. But overall, that meeting of those targets was really important. So it'd be really good to understand what we're doing next year.
Really important point raised in the question. So the consultation is to get the views of Londoners, but also, importantly, investors, developers and providers in relation to the rent control homes, because they've got to have the confidence in the viability of these homes to want to build them. And we're hoping that they'll have certainty in relation to what the product is. But the huge advantage to an investor, a developer and a provider is they will keep these assets in perpetuity, because their rents, there'll be homes for rent in perpetuity, which means they know they've got the asset and a regular income stream. So build to rent will be a viable option going forward. Additionally, we've got to be building more genuinely affordable homes. And so I talked about the next SR getting a good affordable homes programme. I'm afraid the housing market faces a perfect storm. Low growth, high interest rates, construction materials are very expensive, labour shortages, skills shortages, consequences of hard Brexit, uncertainty for 2 years around second staircases and the additional cost and the viability of those. And so that's created the challenges that we've faced. But I'm confident with the right support from the private sector, councils, house associations, the government, we can make progress.
And if we can go on the clock for this. Mr. Mayor, you talked about quality of housing, of rented housing. In order to protect tenants, will you be asking Jazz Athwell to reveal the name of the managing agents who let down his tenants so badly?
Chairman, he's asking about an individual landlord in London. There are thousands of landlords in London. I can't go around asking every single landlord.
I'm not asking you to ask every single landlord. I'm asking you to ask Jazz Athwell, who I think you know.
Let me be quite clear. I will not be asking any individual landlord about deals of the agents that they use in relation to renting their properties. One of the things that I think this shows is the consequences of the deregulation of the market in the 1980s, and this is a legacy, I'm afraid, when it comes to the quality of homes in the private sector of what the Conservative government did in the 1980s.
It's very clear that you will not be asking Jazz Athwell to reveal the name of the managing agents who let down his tenants so badly, and you won't be asking him to reveal the name of those managing agents in order to protect the interests of future renters. But that's very clear. If we can go back off the clock again, the next question is in the name of Assembly Member Wilson, and it concerns domestic burglary in London.
Thanks for your question. Burglary is a crime that causes huge distress to Londoners, as well as the cost of losing their possessions and having their homes damaged. Victims often lose personal items with sentimental value, which can never be replaced. On top of that, this dreadful crime can make people feel unsafe in their own homes. So I'm committed to supporting the Met Police Service to take tougher action against perpetrators of burglary, theft and robberies. This commitment has produced results. Burglary is down 22% since I became Mayor in 2016, but there's no room for complacency, and I remain focused on reducing the prevalence of this awful crime and ensuring its victims receive the police response they need. The MPS takes domestic burglary very seriously and have made a commitment in their new Met for London plan to improve their first response, alongside putting more resources into cutting local crime. Since the latter part of 2022, the Met Police Service has placed a renewed focus on the police response to residential burglaries. The Commissioner is committed to an officer attending every residential burglary, and the most recent MPS attendance rate is 93%. There will always be a few where officers do not attend, for example, where victims decline the offer of attendance or are absent for an extended period. The Met Police Service is also a dedicated lead officer to enhance its response and has introduced dedicated burglary teams to improve the initial and secondary investigations of burglary across London. The Met Police Service is taking this issue very seriously, and it would be wrong to say that the offence has in any way been decriminalised. It's also important to highlight that the solution to this problem cannot simply be enforcement after the fact, important though this is. The Met Police Service undertakes specific activity in burglary hotspots, such as helping people make their homes less vulnerable to burglary and working with local partners, including Neighbourhood Watch. In addition, in these areas, the MPS mounts proactive operations to target offenders. I'll continue to work closely with the Commissioner to revitalise neighbourhood policing. Local teams play a key role in preventing and detecting crime, as well as supporting local communities, ensuring that the needs and concerns of London's communities are addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, as we're talking about theft and burglary, then as well as the epidemic of burglary and the epidemic of shoplifting and epidemic of phone theft that we have in London, it seems, and perhaps Assemblymember Roberts will agree with me today as well for maybe the first time, we've had an epidemic of question theft from the Conservative group. So I'm happy to drop my later question about mobile phones. Suffice to say that those 52,000 phones can't all be in the bottom of Louise Haig's desk drawers. You mentioned a lot of things in your response there, Mr. Mayor, which many of which are very helpful, so thank you for that. But you did in particular, you mentioned about working with local communities and Neighbourhood Watch. So my question that I'd like to move on to is about the online WatchLink crime alert platform, which you'll be aware has been terminated. You'll also be aware that this Assembly recently passed a unanimous motion asking you or MOPAC to reconsider that decision, and the motion listed many of the successes of that platform, generating 14,000 alerts annually, facilitating 6 million emails, 12 million push notifications, but crucially generating real intelligence to both solve and prevent millions of pounds worth of crime, in particular burglary. Why was MOPAC so keen to enforce the decision to close OWL before a suitable replacement has been developed and launched?
Well, Chair, I think the Reform member is alleging that the Tories are stealing Reform clothing. Maybe as a Christmas present he can give Susan Hall a membership form to join the Reform Party, which I'm sure is coming soon. In relation to WatchLink, I mean, look, we consider all these issues of budgets in the round. When it comes to setting budget for next year, we're consulted on the budget. I'd encourage him to respond to the consultation that MOPAC have put out in relation to his response. And I'm sure that we'll look at his response like we will others in relation to what we produce in January.
If we can just hold on, Assemblymember Hall, you want to...
Yes, I do. I was mentioned.
A personal explanation.
I was mentioned. I would like to make it absolutely, utterly clear. I am a proud Conservative, and I always will be.
That's a shame. I'll keep working on you, don't worry. No, back to the question. So,
Chair, can I just say we won't?
Okay. When I contacted MOPAC about this in October, they confirmed, and I have the letter here, that effectively there is no suitable replacement. Instead, people are being redirected to platforms like Facebook, WhatsApp, Nextdoor and Twitter, which I think is a lamentable alternative compared to the purpose-built platform with its over 125,000 existing contacts on there. I understand that the suppliers of OWL were bullied into deleting their data by mid-November. So not only is the structure been decommissioned, but the contacts and intelligence are now irretrievable. But I note that the response from the Commissioner to this motion that we had at the plenary meeting of the Assembly was dated the 10th of December, therefore after that mid-November deadline, for effectively the closure of OWL and it's no longer being of any practical use. Do you agree that that lack of urgency, regardless of the ultimate rights or wrongs of the decision, that lack of urgency in providing a response before that deadline, does that show the utmost disrespect to this Assembly and the Londoners that put us here?
So if I understand the question, the complaint is that the Commissioner didn't respond quickly enough to a letter from the member? From the Assembly. Well, I mean, I think the Commissioner is juggling on any day a number of different balls, and over the course of a week, a huge number of issues. And so I'm not sure what pressures his office is under, but I imagine they're humongous in relation to prioritising issues. At the same time, he'd be criticised if he took his eye off the ball of trying to get more money from the government in relation to police resources and the other issues he does on a daily basis. So look, I can't answer for the Commissioner in relation to why the letter came back on that certain day. What I can say, he works a huge amount of hours doing a huge number of issues, and there's probably a very good reason why the response it wasn't as quickly as the member would have liked.
Would you agree it would have been helpful to have had that response before OWL was wound down?
Well, as I said to him, it's open to him to put down a budget amendment to try and find the resources to invest in WatchLink, OWL, or other similar processes and stuff. He'll appreciate, because I think he'd be not reasonably the first one to complain if rules in relation to data retention were breached. by anybody, and so there are strict rules in relation to data retention, so I suspect those are the reasons why there may be issues around the old database.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid Assemblymember Wilson is now out of time. The next question is regarding the Mayor's consultation budget, and it's from Assemblymember Harani.
Thanks for your question. The budget is a key means of our delivering a fairer, safer and greener London. I'm now using the consultation process to ask Londoners for their views on the submissions I've received from GLA Group organisations. The consultation closes on the 3rd of January and will consider all submissions when drafting the budget in early January. The aim of the budget will be to target resources where they can make the biggest difference to Londoners' lives. This includes, for example, supporting Londoners with the cost of living, providing free school meals to all state primary schools, building more council and affordable homes, tackling street homelessness, offering free training for the unemployed and people in low-paid work, supporting businesses to create jobs and growth, and investing millions in green projects to lead the way in tackling the climate crisis and pollution. On top of all this, as well as continuing to be tough on crime, I'm committed to addressing its complex causes. I've already doubled City Hall's investment in policing to a record £1.148 billion this year, to strengthen neighbourhood policing, tackling high-harm crimes and supporting reform. And since 2016, we've funded over 500,000 positive opportunities to divert vulnerable young Londoners away from crime, including through London's Violence Reduction Unit. Supported by record investment from City Hall, the London Fire Brigade has significantly improved its performance and culture, responding to emergencies faster and earning an outstanding rating for responding to major and multi-agency incidents. I worked with the new government to secure an extra £485 million for TfL, supporting the essential maintenance, renewal and growth of London's transport system. Our focus is on enhancing and expanding services across our city to make London's transport network better, greener, more accessible and as affordable as possible. The common thread in all my efforts as mayor is to ensure that all Londoners have the same opportunities to reach their full potential that London provided to me and my family. I'll continue to use every tool at my disposal to provide the helping hand Londoners need, and I'll never stop working to build a fairer, safer and greener London for everyone.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And on the provisional local government finance settlement, it was published last night, showing an overall increase to your budget. When do you feel that you'll be in a position to confirm the funding's available for free school meals?
Well, I'm quite clear that we'll publish the budget in early January after we've taken on board the consultation made by Londoners. But Londoners know that when I make a promise, I keep it, and my promise is, as long as I'm mayor, we'll carry on providing universal free school meals.
Thank you. And so as your commitment to free school meals has been proven over the last few years, although you're on dangerous grounds of putting hot meals on the table and sandwiches off the menu, you're in dangerous ground of being on common ground with Kemi Badenoch with that. But we'll await the budget for the next, for your announcement on free school meals. The 34% on NIC as well, the increase that you've mentioned, so what impact will that have on policing?
Look, one of the things that I'm not going to run away from doing is making tough decisions. Some of this assembly were against us providing universal free school meals to all state primary school children, and I will not tire of reminding Londoners we did it in the face of Conservative opposition. In relation to the National and International Capital Cities grant, we've had crocodile tears over the last 5 months about the need for more funding for the police. We had no support from the government in relation to increasing NIC over the last 8 years. The first opportunity presented to the Home Secretary, she's increased NIC to the tune of £60+ million, which by my calculations is 34% plus more than last year, which shows that this government is serious about addressing these issues and fixing the foundations of the public services and the mess left by the previous government.
Thank you. And with the Christmas and festive period coming, I'd like to wish you a happy Christmas. But how will you be ensuring that Londoners can enjoy a festive period?
Well, I think during the course of this morning, we've heard some of the concerns that Londoners will have from drinks being spiked, to staff at venues not having the proper training, to there not being sufficient reassurance to Londoners as they go about enjoying what should be a great Christmas period because of fears about their phone being stolen or being the victim of a crime. I think one of the things that the Commissioner would say if he was here is, in addition to his officers working incredibly hard during this Christmas period, we the public can be the police's eyes and ears. the police are the public are the police. And so I think all of us have a role to play as good citizens to make sure not just we're safe, but our friends, neighbours and families are safe as well. And it could be strangers in a shop or strangers on a street are safe as well. And I know that is the London spirit that I know, and it coincides with this season of goodwill and hopefully a happy Christmas.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is in my name and concerns sexual health clinics.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for your question. As Mayor, I have no direct role in the health service and therefore no role in relation to the establishment or delivery of sexual health services in the capital. The Health and Social Care Act 2012 set out local authorities' responsibilities for commissioning open access sexual health services in their areas. Decisions about the exact configuration and location of sexual health services are therefore taken by London boroughs to best meet their residents' needs. Following many years of underinvestment by the previous government, local authorities are under intense financial pressure. Sexual health services in the capital have experienced a combination of increased demand and reduced budgets, which has put a huge strain on both commissioners and providers within the system. The public health grant has been cut by 28% on a real terms per person basis since 25-26, 28%, with the King's Fund estimating that sexual health services spend has reduced by 40% over this period. I know that decisions on important services are not taken lightly. I understand that Enfield Council remains dedicated to ensuring that the sexual health needs of local communities are met with high quality, effective and accessible services, and I understand they'll continue to explore all viable options to achieve this goal. In London, local authorities are networked into a sub-regional configuration and have regional governance through the Sexual Health London Partnership. This means that system partners can collaborate across the city to ensure that adequate provision is in place, given that sexual health services are open access and many users of sexual health services have already moved to online provision. The Council is currently working through the implications of a proposed closure with the current provider, North Middlesex University Hospital NHS Trust, commissioners of sexual health services in other North Central London boroughs, and the wider Sexual Health London programme. This will help them understand how the potential closure might impact upon residents' access to sexual health services, as well as increased demand upon other open access services across London. It's essential that all Londoners, and in particular individuals at risk of poor sexual health, have access to services that meet their sexual health needs, no matter where they live in the capital. I know that the work now being undertaken by Enfield Council to assess the potential impacts of the proposed closure will proceed with this principle in mind.
Thank you. The question is specifically about if you are making any representations. You have a commitment to improve the access to sexual health services throughout London. A closure of a clinic means that that access is going to be reduced, and so I'm wondering what representations you or your officers will be making to Enfield Council about how they will be continuing the service.
No, thanks for this question and the way you asked it. So public health is clearly a concern to me. I wasn't aware of this particular issue until I saw the question from the member this week, so I've asked my officers to work closely with Enfield, depending on what they decide to do. Clearly, they will know my views from the answer I gave, but to make sure they understand the importance of their residents having access to this service. He'll be aware from the question he's asked and the way he's asked it. The concern clearly is people who previously had access won't have access going forward, and that's one of the issues we'll be raising with them.
Thank you for that. You could also possibly mention to Enfield Council that announcing this closure within days of World AIDS Day is not the best kind of optic one could have. Thank you very much, and we'll go back off the clock again. The next question has been, in the name of Assembly Member Prince, has been withdrawn. Just this second. So we'll now move on to a question regarding estate regeneration ballots, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Small Edwards.
Thanks for your question. Residents living on social housing estates deserve a say over what happens to their community. That's why I introduced my resident ballot requirement to put the voice of residents at the heart of estate regeneration plans where they belong. Councils and house associations that want City Hall funding for estate regeneration need to take residents' views into account when developing plans. This has helped ensure tenants can return to new homes, leaseholders get fairer deals, and community facilities are improved. As of this October, there have been 36 ballots where residents approved plans. Landlords won't necessarily tell my team about ballots where residents rejected plans, and they're not obliged to, but we only know of one where this has happened. That's because if landlords want their proposals approved, they need to ensure redevelopment works for residents. We know of one landlord that held a pre-ballot vote so residents could select one of a number of potential approaches to regeneration. My ballot requirement isn't my only policy that aims to make sure estate regeneration meets residents' needs and delivers more affordable homes. My London plan makes clear that planning authorities should only approve demolition where a landlord has assessed its costs and benefits, and that where affordable homes are demolished, they're replaced with equivalent affordable housing floor space. It also requires that where social tenants are returning to estates, their homes are replaced with social rented homes. We've also at times been hampered by previous government policies. For example, the previous governments wouldn't let me fund social rented homes through my 2016-2023 Affordable Homes programme, or initially fund replacements for most demolished homes from my 2021 and 2026 programme. Following concerted lobbying by City Hall and the sector, we were able to persuade the last government to shift its position on both of these, and I'm also pleased to say that the new government has approved additional funding to unlock stalled estate regeneration projects in London. Estate regeneration is complex, most of all for those who live on estates. But my ballot requirement and London plan policies help ensure estate regeneration improves social and affordable housing, increases supply, and puts the needs of residents at the heart of plans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I wish you, all Assembly members, all staff and all Londoners a Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Can also thank you for the charity football game on Monday. And I just want to give you my assurances and to Assembly Member Best and Assembly Member Harani that next year I'll remember my shooting boots. On the regeneration ballot schemes, how do you believe that these ensure that regeneration projects deliver maximum social value outcomes for residents?
Well, I was going to mention all the chances you missed, James, but as you mentioned it, Emma and Krupas, we can now mention it. But yeah, so look, it's really important to involve the community who will benefit or see the disbenefits of a regeneration, but also to incentivise developers to do right by their residents. And you know, what no developer wants is for their plans to be vetoed, right? And what a good developer, council, housing association will want to do is to have happy residents, and so this leads to new community spaces, which wins residents over. It leads to creating new play spaces, which wins residents over. It leads to the new homes that are built being offered to adult tenants living in overcrowded accommodation. So that's the quid pro quo of getting permission. And so, you know, I think that we've shown in London how democratising regeneration leads to better results.
Thank you, and I'm sure you'll be aware of the Ebury Bridge estate in my constituency in South Westminster. The previous Tory administration in Westminster refused to do a ballot. The Labour administration in Westminster did a ballot, got huge, overwhelming support from residents. That unlocked more funding from the GLA and is leading to an additional 130 new social homes. So can you just say a bit about how you think the ballot process is unlocking additional social and affordable homes across the city?
Well, can I put on record my congratulations and thanks to the leader of Westminster Council, Adam Hugg, and the transformation in that council and the provision to its residents since he took over and Labour became running that council, and he will know from personal experience the difference that's made. So the previous Conservative council declined funds from City Hall for the simple reason they didn't want to involve residents when it comes to plans for this development. So nothing happened, and they were happy with nothing happening. What does the new council do? It starts working with the residents about what sorts of plans they want to see on their estate. They agree to having a ballot. They receive funding from City Hall. The ballot happens. Residents vote for the regeneration. On the old estate, there were 336 homes, roughly speaking, 198 social rented. The regeneration will lead to almost 800 homes, more than doubling of affordable homes. In fact, 172 additional new social rented homes. So the residents benefit, new residents benefit, the council benefits, our city benefits, all because people in that borough voted Labour at the last council elections, and I'd encourage them to vote Labour again at the next one in 2026.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
Where is Tony Devenish?
I do beg your pardon, a little administrative issue up here.
127.
Yeah. The next question concerns the TfL business plan, and it's the name of, in the name of Assembly Member Baker, and I apologise for the
Thanks for your question.
confusion.
Undertaking a full business plan requires Transport for London, TfL, to work through priorities and activities over 5 or more years, understand exactly how this will balance financially, and then set this out for stakeholders to understand. Completing this extensive process shortly ahead of receiving clarity in multi-year funding would not provide this certainty, so TfL has adjusted its approach this year. TfL has produced a budget submission with a focused update on 25-26 financial year, with a lighter touch approach to the years 26-27 and beyond, retaining key investment assumptions made in the TfL 2024 business plan. A full update to the TfL business plan will be published later next year, following the outcome of the multi-year spending review. I'm pleased that this government has recognised the benefits that investing in TfL can have not only for London, but for the whole of the UK. In the October budget, the government granted TfL £485 million for capital investment in 25-26, almost twice as much as the previous government the year before. This will enable TfL to invest in renewing critical assets, which is vital after a decade of underinvestment due to uncertain and insufficient government funding since 2015. This investment means TfL can continue to make progress towards the goal of a better London for everyone, a city that's safer, greener, fairer and more prosperous. It also brought progress on new capital projects such as replacing rolling stock for the Bakerloo line, which will be manufactured in Goole, and replacement trams. This investment is much needed. The current stock are the oldest trains and trams in passenger operation in the UK. TfL can also progress work on schemes that will support economic growth in new homes, such as the DLR extension to Thamesmead. TfL is invested in other operational priorities, such as tackling violence against women and girls, developing Superloop 2, and inviting bidders to deliver purpose-built solar farms to power the underground network with cleaner energy. To continue delivering safe, reliable services and vital improvements to London's transport network, TfL now needs a long-term funding settlement in the spending review.
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and thank you for updating on that situation. I'd like to specifically firstly ask about the draft budget, and as we've seen, passengers are seeing an impact on service reliability, particularly on Tube, on certain lines, because we're seeing the impact of years of underfunding of our transport system by the previous government. So I'm really pleased that in the draft budget there was an increase of £300 million on renewals. So can you talk about what improvements passengers will be able to see from that increased?
Yeah, I'm really pleased the members focused our question on renewals, not just the growth and the maintenance, which often colleagues do. So some of the things that we can now turn our minds towards, because we've got the funding to do so, is in relation to a new fleet, in relation to investing more in the fleet, in the Metropolitan line, the District line, the Victoria line, improving the tracks, renewing those, signalling work on the Central and Bakerloo line. And talking of renewals, we do need to make sure that the major road networks, Brent Cross, Gallows Corner, Croydon Flyover, are renewed, because if they're not renewed now, it could lead to dangers on those particular roads, and the importance of that fabric not being maintained. So that's an example of the renewal, and that leads to greater reliability and greater safety as well.
Thank you. You've mentioned a little bit about what you're hoping we'll be able to achieve with phase 2 of the spending review from the government next year. Can you also talk about what that might mean for existing services and existing customers, existing passengers, what a long-term settlement would do for us?
I think any major organisation has got to invest in the future and not stand still. Otherwise, you have a situation where reliability is affected, safety is affected, and so forth. And so what we're trying to persuade the government is investing in transport in London will lead to growth, will lead to more homes, will lead to an unlocking of the potential in our city. It will lead to brownfield sites being opened up, potentially tens of thousands of homes being built, but also, really importantly, jobs created around the country. And we've given them examples of where investment in London can make a big difference. I mentioned Goole in relation to my first answer. These trains for the PIC line, potentially the Bakerloo line, are made in Yorkshire, jobs created there. You look at the national highways, look at Network Rail, look at other city regions across the country. They have multi-year deals. If it's good enough for them, why not London? And it also means we can get better deals from when we procure, because we've got the certainty to negotiate long-term deals. So look, the potential is humongous in relation to if we get a multi-year deal in the SR. It will do well. It will mean that current passengers see the benefits in terms of services being maintained and renewed, but also the benefits of future growth in public transport in London.
Thank you. That's all. Thanks. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you. The next question has been withdrawn, and so we then come to a question regarding the improving transparency in London government in the name of Assembly Member Russell.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for your question. Despite the previous government not doing so, my mayoralty puts transparency at the heart of everything we do. I'm confident I've been the most transparent mayor ever, and our commitment goes well beyond the mandatory local government transparency code. We publish interest, gifts, hospitality and expenses for me, the mayoral advisors and senior Greater London Authority officers. We publish details of senior officer responsibilities, salary data and a GLA organogram. We publish hundreds of data sets on the London Data Store, which averages over 125,000 users per month, helping Londoners understand their city and develop solutions to London's challenges. We publish gender and ethnicity pay audit data and action plans. We've signed up to the Code of Practice for Statistics, becoming the first organisation to do so voluntarily. We have pre-announced publication dates for our stats for enhanced transparency. We're rigorous about both statutory and non-statutory consultations. All our statutory strategies were consulted on widely for between 12 and 14 weeks, including public engagement through Talk London, representative polls, surveys of Londoners, focus groups, interviews and stakeholder and community engagement meetings. The online publication of my diary is up to date earlier this year. There have been mayoral and assembly elections since, as well as general election. My commitment to publish my diary goes beyond what any previous mayor has done. My predecessors did not publish their diaries, nor did they take many of the other steps on transparency I've just described. I also publish a monthly report to the Assembly of my diary engagement, published online for anyone to access. They cover my key engagements as well as many of the activities of my deputy mayors and other members of my team. On top of my diary and my report to the Assembly, I answer many questions through the MQT process. I'm told I've answered more than 5,000 questions this year alone. I'm pleased that through both statutory processes and voluntary publications, London Assembly members and Londoners have unprecedented access to information about the work I'm doing for London. I've made the decision to go beyond the requirements of the Local Government Transparency Code because of the nature and profile of my position. Other London government agencies will make decisions on this based on their own circumstances.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for setting out the way that you go beyond what's set out in the local government code in terms of publication of your diary. Now, when the Local Government Transparency Code was introduced in 2015, one of the reasons given was that the more citizens feel informed, the more they tend to be satisfied with public services and their local authorities. And that's why I'm proud that I publish my diary to help increase the understanding of our role here in the Assembly. So it's good for democracy for residents just to be able to see more about what we do. So briefly, when discussing publications of diaries last month, you said what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. Can I just clarify, was this agreement with the principle that elected people should publish their activities?
It was a comment about previous mayors who'd not done so. But I'm quite clear in relation to the importance of me doing so. It's really important that I do so. But I realise, by the way, it's an additional administrative burden on my staff. It's an additional resources burden on my staff. A lot of effort goes into us being proactively transparent, and I recognise that.
Thank you. I'm going to take that as broadly a yes. But on another issue of transparency and civil liberties, comes out of your recent announcement about 300 new CCTV cameras installed across London that can take clearer, high-quality images of citizens, and the footage being made available to the Metropolitan Police. Now, can you tell me who in the Met Police will have access to this footage, and what rules will apply before they can access and view it? For example, will they need a warrant?
There are safeguards in place, and as you'll appreciate, the information and data commissioners are involved. I've not got the details to hand. I'm more than happy to write to her to give her the information that she asks.
I would very much like to have that information. Yes, London is the most surveilled city in the world outside of China, sitting at number 3 in the world for cameras watching its citizens. There are 628,000 cameras in London, which is equivalent to 1 camera for every 14 residents. which feels a bit like Big Brother. And your press release says that the new cameras are monitored 24 hours a day by camera operators who've been able to tip off police when they've recognised people who are wanted in connection with crime. So do you know who these camera operators are employed by? The Met, TfL, local councils, or someone else?
But she raises a wider general issue before she gets to the specific point in her question. So on the specific point, I'll happily write to in relation to letting her know who has access to the information in real time. But on the point of principle, look, I think it's really important for me to say loud and clear, I fully support not just the closed-circuit TV cameras we have, but the rollout of more where possible and affordable. Let me tell her why. Because she wants to have a discussion about the use of CCTV. But CCTV not only deters crime.
It's about the transparency around the use of CCTV.
Well,
that's what my question's been about.
no.
But I'm actually out of time now, Mr. Mayor, so I'm going to leave it there.
Thank you. Assembly Member Best, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One way in which London Government could be more transparent is by not declaring gifts and hospitality late, not misrepresenting who has given them, and not significantly undervaluing the cost of gifts and hospitality declared, all three of which you did with your Taylor Swift tickets in summer. So given you received those tickets from a company that they were, at the time when they offered those tickets, were tendering for a GLA contract they went on to win, will you restore faith and do as Keir Starmer has and pay those tickets back?
There's a number of allegations in that question, which it's not for me to respond to allegations she's making against an individual company. I'm sure they'll want to respond to the allegations she's making. But I checked in relation to...
Mr. Mayor, I'll give you 15 seconds, because I've given that laxity to other people, but technically the members have time.
And that gives me time to remind the Assembly that the previous mayor claimed more than £221,000 on gifts and hospitality, much more than I did, and he was only mayor for 8 years.
The Chair, but the Mayor doesn't want to ask questions, so can I just quickly congratulate him on his wonderful assist on Monday to end the year on a positive note?
Thank you. Technically, no, you can't. But we'll move on to the next question now, which is in the name of Assembly Member Bakari, and it's about TfL customer experience.
Thanks for your question. I'm proud of the great customer experience provided across TfL services, but more can always be done. And TfL is working hard to make improvements across the network to give people more reasons to use sustainable travel. Safety is mine TfL's #1 priority, which is why TfL is founded on making its services safer, especially for women and girls at night. It's achieving this through well-trained operational staff, more CCTV, better lighting, and by encouraging people to be active bystanders. TfL's improving bus journey times and connectivity, particularly in outer London, with new services like the Superloop. New buses are accessible, more sustainable and brighter, and they come with new features like charging points. New Piccadilly Line and DLR trains coming in 2025 will help improve reliability and frequency. They'll be air-conditioned and have walk-through carriages, better customer information systems and CCTV. The Central Line upgrade will bring improved reliability, wheelchair bays, better customer information systems and CCTV in carriages. I'm delighted that signage for the newly named London Overground lines began to be unveiled from 20th of November, making it easier for customers to navigate the network. Customer information, both for journey planning and during disruption, is crucial. The TfL Go app is already used extensively by many Londoners and is continually being enhanced to provide more functionality. Its journey planning and real-time information features are becoming increasingly accessible as 4G and 5G coverage expands across the network. Earlier this year, TfL published its ambitious customer strategy, Equity in Motion, to help create a fairer and more accessible and inclusive transport network. Across all TfL services, more than half the network is now step-free accessible. Since I've been mayor, 24 stations of the Tube network have been made step-free. A third of the Tube network now provides step-free access. It was a quarter when I became mayor, and we're working to increase this to 50%. For the first time, I provided dedicated funding from City Hall to TfL to increase the number and accessibility of toilets across the Tube, Overground and Elizabeth lines. In October, TfL published its plan for investing this £3 million annual funding, aiming to ensure customers are always within 20 minutes of a toilet without changing lines. These are just some examples of the important work being done by TfL to improve customer experience, which is crucial to efforts to encourage more Londoners to use sustainable travel.
Thank you for your very full answer and season's greetings. My question is on whether you are completely satisfied that TfL have handled all customer-related concerns linked to the cyber security incident, specifically for the students who are coming to London for the first time and didn't have originally have a photo card, and their finances have been particularly stretched.
Chair, I'm more than happy to look into the individual examples of the students you're referring to. I recognise the cyber incident left many vulnerable people struggling and out of pocket as they're to pay for their travel. TfL will be reimbursing people and offering them the compensation to make up for the disruption they faced.
Currently on the website for refunds and replacements on the TfL website, it's really difficult to work out how to get the refunds if you've been unable to get a photo card during that period of disruption. So will you ensure to make sure that this is clearly signposted on that particular page for customers that have yet to apply for a refund?
Okay, can I thank her for bringing this to my attention? I'll go and look into this because we've got to make it as easy as possible. What we don't want to do is make it almost impossible for someone to claim that. Can I look at this and come back to it?
Thank you. And very quickly, the Dial-A-Ride was also impacted. We really need to boost the confidence of users for Dial-A-Ride, and their service was impacted during this period. Are you taking action to make sure that this system is more robust and reliable?
I think this question is really important about lessons to be learned. Firstly, look, TfL should be really proud, and we should be really proud of the fact that the criminal activities didn't lead to more disruption. TfL are speaking to not just the National Cybersecurity Centre, not just the National Crime Agency, but others to see what more can be done. And by the way, they're also providing advice to others in relation to what they can be doing to make them as resilient as TfL was. But she's right to remind me that one of the things I've got to do as chair of TfL is to make sure lessons are learned, because we should be a learning organisation that learns going forward, because I'm afraid these hackers aren't going away.
I'm really grateful for that. Thank you very much.
Will the Assembly agree to suspend Standing Order 2.9b in order to allow the remaining business on the agenda to be completed? Thank you. We now, the next question's withdrawn, so we now move to the question in the name of Assembly Member Moema concerning the mitigation of tube noise for residents.
Can I thank her for this question? Look, tackling tube noise for colleagues, customers and neighbours is really important to me and to Transport for London, so all Londoners can live and travel as comfortably as possible. I know just how miserable noise nuisance can be. Despite funding and logistical challenges, TfL is carrying out extensive work to reduce noise and vibration across the London Underground network, and I've made it clear that I'd like to see this problem tackled proactively and innovatively. The main cause of track noise is attributed to corrugated rails, and TfL is working hard to reduce noise and vibration levels for drivers, customers and local residents. TfL's efforts to reduce track noise have proved effective, with a comprehensive track renewal and maintenance programme taking place as part of the ongoing renewal of the transport network. Where renewals are taking place, resilient base plates are being used as part of the deep tube reconditioning programme, helping to alleviate noise and vibration issues for local residents. Data-led rail grinding initiatives aimed at smoothing the tracks are being employed to manage rail corrugation and minimise in-carriage noise levels for customers across multiple tube lines and stations. Whilst these initiatives have had a positive impact on noise level reductions, there's still clearly room for improvement. As works to reduce noise and vibration levels continue, TfL is simultaneously seeking proactive ways to tackle the root causes of rail corrugation. London's metro system is the oldest in the world and one of the largest, and its unique infrastructural needs have presented challenges in minimising noise levels across the network. TfL is pioneering the use of noise minimising infrastructure, while searching the market to identify forward-thinking solutions suited to the particular needs of the London Underground. I understand that high noise and vibration levels can often have a negative impact on Londoners. Whilst this work progresses, TfL will continue to ensure that all noise concerns raised by residents and customers are taken seriously by investigating every complaint thoroughly.
Thank you, Mayor Khan, and thank you very much for that update on where things are in terms of the existing programme and what TfL has said that they're going to be doing. I think there's clearly an issue around balancing the requirements of dealing with that noise for the staff and drivers on the tube, passengers, but in this, my question is really around the residents that live above different parts of the tube network. And for those people, there is no escape, really. And I think the thing I would say is that people understand we live in a city and noise is unavoidable. But in the coming year, what would be really good to see from TfL is, beyond the biannual meetings I've been having with the Deputy Mayor and with residents, to have a holistic approach to addressing tube noise across the whole network. I know people from all parties have similar complaints. And so just being able to also include residents in the design and the delivery of those mitigations. And I would really love to be part of that conversation in the new year, along with my constituents, to make sure that we can once and for all deal with it. Because I take on board your point about TfL dealing with complaints, but one of the issues residents have raised is that that could be sped up so that they are more involved in and understanding and disseminating information to the rest of their neighbourhoods.
Okay, Chair, can I thank the member for asking a question the way she raised it, and her articulating the frustration of her residents. I mean, when I was preparing for MQTs, I reminded myself that Janet Arnold raised this issue 8 years ago. And I know also the impact of lack of sleep because of noise, the impact it has on quality of life is just awful. And she raises a really sensible way forward. I should say, look, TfL did a huge amount on it, but that doesn't change the impact it has on your constituents, right? And so let me. Yes, the answer is yes. And let me also, suggest. I'll suggest to my colleagues at TfL and Seb Dance about involving your constituents so they know what's happening. I'll give you an example. TfL looking at mass dampers used in Hong Kong, far newer metro system, but actually that can reduce noise. And so we are looking at what else is happening around the world and so forth. But she's right. If we involve the residents, that they get they live in a global city, but it's still that doesn't mean you can't get a decent night's sleep because of the tube. So let me take that away.
Thank you very much. I'd be really grateful for that. And just to say, this is one of the first issues that was left with me in a handover from former Assembly Member Jeanette Arnold. So it's clearly an issue in Highbury, but also across all of London. I'd be really welcome being part of that conversation.
I wouldn't be forgiven if I didn't mention also Andrew Dismore and Anne Clark, because I think there's the geographical hotspots around London and stuff, and so I get it. And when I do take MQTs very seriously, but also when I see a question or an issue that I've seen before, I do go back and look, and that's why I know it causes huge misery to your constituents, and I promise to go away and work with you and your residents to try and find better ways to keeping them informed and being proactive as well.
I think it's fair to say, looking at Assembly Member Duval, this is a question that's been raised forever, tube noise, the noise of tubes. So it's Tony Devonish, of course, yes. The next question is in the name of Assembly Member Polanski, and it concerns adopting recommendations of the London Climate Resilience Review.
Thanks for your question. This year we've continued to see the devastation caused by increasingly destructive weather events around the world, most recently in Valencia, which the member referred to at the last meeting. The southeast of England is experiencing above average rainfall in 21 of the last 26 months, including recent storms, with 2023-2024 being the wettest on record over the last 136 years. This followed, by the way, a period of drier than normal conditions in 2021 and 2022, which led to drought. I published my response to the review in July, setting out the actions we're taking to progress recommendations relating to the GLA group. As Mayor of London, I don't have the necessary funding or powers to deliver what's needed alone, and I'll continue to work closely with partners across London and nationally to go develop plans and actions to deliver on the recommendations. I've set aside an additional £1 million every year to implement recommendations from the review. The development of delivery plans for my key priorities, including adaptation and resilience, are now well advanced. I've already taken forward some actions recommended by the review, such as conducting exercise Helios, a multi-agency exercise to test London's preparedness for a period of extreme heat. This will help inform the development of a new Pan-London Extreme Heat Plan, developed with partners that will set out roles, responsibilities and actions to better prepare London for overheating. I continue to work with boroughs and community groups to identify spaces where vulnerable Londoners can take refuge from the heat or cold, and to deliver blue-green infrastructure to help cool our city and increase flood resilience. I've also commissioned work to help ensure London's water infrastructure capacity is efficient and sustainable, while supporting the new homes Londoners needs. And I continue to work with partners to ensure the forthcoming London Service Water flooding strategy progresses quickly to delivery. My officers have also secured funding for technical assistance from the EU Pathways to Resilience programme. This will help support delivery of multiple review recommendations, including an adaptation vision and delivery plan in close partnership with stakeholders, including London boroughs. I've invested over £24 million through my Green New Deal fund to improve climate resilience across the capital, plus a further £1.5 million to deliver climate adaptation measures to 95 London schools at the greatest climate risk. I'll be monitoring progress against the review recommendations as I continue to work with partners to boost London's resilience.
Thank you. There's a lot to do. I realise it's odd that it's a cold December day, but I want to talk about extreme heat because, as we know, we need to be prepared. Also, there's a campaign, #HeatStrike, led by trade unions and campaigners talking about heat in workplaces and working conditions, particularly for people from working class backgrounds who are more likely to work in areas that are unsuitable. Now, one of the recommendations that you accepted was around an extreme heat strategy plan, and in fact, you just referred to it in your answer there. What's the timeline for that, and when will we see things implemented?
I've got actually a grid of all 50 recommendations and the notes which I'll respond to the member in writing in relation to that particular one. We'll be publishing early next year a delivery plan on the mayoral delivery programme. So he'll get, in the first quarter of next year, us setting out a reporting mechanism so he can hold me to account, and also I can make sure my team's delivering on the recommendations of the review.
That's really good to hear that that'll be transparent and public. Will there be enough money in your budget for climate adaptation?
No. I mean, look, the amount of money we need is not, it can't come out of the City Hall budget alone, but just to reassure him, I've had more constructive conversations with the government over the last 5 months on this issue than in the previous 8 or so years. I'm hopeful the prospect of a multi-year deal will include issues that he's referring to in relation to adaptations, an issue that he's passionate about, retrofitting, which are linked, and the potential of a multi-year deal that includes those budgets is transformative potentially.
It's good to hear those conversations are progressing. Obviously, there's a huge urgency to this, and I know you accept that. One of our recommendations is around another Stern review or Das Gupta around financing and climate. Is that something you'd support the government doing? Yeah, and one of the things that I think Caroline's been really good at helping us is tracking what we do, and so we've also put in money around green finance. Yep. So we're using public money to try and leverage in private money. We've been in it for the last few years now, but tracking it rewards success. And so I'll give him one example in relation to what we've done is, since the new Deputy Mayor took over, he's managed to persuade one of our stadiums to have solar panels on their roofs. And then this week he was talking to another Premier League club in London as well. So that's an example of some of the stuff we're doing to make progress, private and public working together, using City Hall resources, sometimes money, staff and others to get the private sector involved as well. We had a great presentation actually from the head of sustainability at LLDC. It's really exciting what they're doing there. Moving on to floods. So the Environment Agency released a report this week, which I'm sure you've seen, that says London is most at risk. Now we know we've got the Thames Barrier to deal with tidal flood, we've got the Tideway Tunnel to deal with sewage and the quality of the water. Are you confident that there'll be enough investment from government to protect Londoners from floods? So the Secretary of State for Environment, he and I went out on the River Thames recently. I think he may be the first ever member of the Cabinet to take a river ride with me. But one of the reasons was to recognise the challenges we have, opportunities as well, in relation to our river. In the past, when we've dealt with the Department for Environment and DEFRA, my concerns being, and the Environment Agency, is their focus when it comes to flooding is coastal flooding. Right. Is river flooding, not flash flooding that we have in London. And so the Helios operation I talked about was looking at some of these issues in relation to heat. We also will do one in relation to surface flooding as well. Will we get the investment we need to protect Londoners? Yeah, I think this government is determined to make sure that we make the changes to adaptation that we need to do, become more resilient, really important, and adapt to the climate emergency. Okay, and on that, I wish you and the rest of the Assembly a Merry Christmas. I think I'm the only Jewish member in the chamber, so thanks for all the Hanukkah wishes too. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next question is in the name of Assembly Member Clark, and it concerns fire safety in new homes.
Thanks for your question. After the tragedy of the Grenfell Tower fire, it was clear that building safety needed a complete overhaul to reform the national regulatory system and ensure buildings are constructed and refurbished to high safety standards. The Grenfell Tower Inquiry final report contained important recommendations to deliver improved fire standards and building safety. This included recommending a review of approved Document B, which provides guidance on how to meet building regulations on fire safety.
The government's committed to a continuous review process for building regulations which will ensure the system is responsive to emerging risks and feedback, and also reviewing the way guidance is produced, updated and communicated. Where the national government policy has previously fallen short, I've used my powers to ensure the highest standards of safety of new developments in London. I ensure that all new homes funded through the Affordable Homes Programme 2021-2026 or developed on GLA land are required to include automatic fire suppression systems such as sprinklers. This applies to all new residential buildings regardless of height. I've also banned the use of combustible materials in the external walls of all homes and buildings regardless of their height. My London Plan policies requires all developments to achieve the highest standards of fire safety and to incorporate safe and dignified emergency evacuation for all building users. The GLA is administering 3 building safety funding schemes on behalf of the government, paying out over £1 billion across almost 1,200 individual payments to fund remediation work so far. 57% of these buildings are now either fully remediated or have remediation underway. I'll continue to work with the government to ensure we have a national regulatory regime that's fit for purpose and ensure buildings in London are constructed and refurbished to high safety standards.
Thank you for that. And can I also thank you for all the work you've done on this, because I remember a time not so long ago when we had some very frustrating meetings where it was very clear that although you were acting because the previous government was not, there were severe delays to issuing guidance on fire safety measures. And I know from my own constituency that we have many building sites that would sit there with planning permission, but they were unclear what the guidance was going forward, or people, developers waiting to put in applications awaiting that guidance. How did this delay in issuing guidance on fire safety measures, such as second staircases, impact delivery of housing in London?
Well, I think the government's dither and delay on this matter has led to thousands of homes that could have been built not being built. Despite promises made by Michael Gove, there was inaction. I remember in December 2022 being told there'd be a rapid transition period, certainty given in relation to those buildings above 18 metres, and the rules in relation to a second staircase. That promise was made in December 2022. It wasn't until March 2024 that there was some updated guidance. And during that period, not a lot happened. So you've got a situation now where schemes that were previously planned with one staircase are now no longer viable. Others have decided to just pause. And homes that could have been built weren't built. The calculation, the last time I checked this, was I think homes to the tune of 38,000 could have been built that weren't built. Some of those now won't materialise because these schemes are no longer viable. And that's an example of the cost of incompetence of the previous government.
Yeah, thank you for that. And obviously fire safety is extremely important to all Londoners, and you've shown how important it is to you as mayor. How is the GLA working with social housing providers to ensure retrofitting and compliance across some of our older estates?
Well, one of the frustrations social housing providers have had is that the financial support the government announced only went to private homes, not social homes. And councils have got to balance their budgets. They've got an obligation to provide new homes. They've got huge housing waiting lists, but also to remediate the homes they've got, other issues in relation to retrofit and so forth. So look, it's a big challenge for councils, and I'm afraid money's being spent on remediation means money not being spent on new homes being built by councils. And so one of the conversations we're having with the government is how we can free up a council to, for example, borrow more, for example, use right to buy proceeds, and so forth, to try and speed up the delivery of new homes whilst addressing the issue of those homes that aren't safe, frankly speaking.
Thank you for that. And you made an important point earlier to Assemblymember James Small-Edwards about the importance of boroughs working together. I recall a time, and not so in the distant past, when the Conservatives controlled Barnet Council. They decided to spend their time, refusing to work together with City Hall, missed out on policing, missed out on housing, missed out on everything, and then went further to declare you an enemy of the people of Barnet, which remains appalling. I'm delighted to call you a friend of the people of Barnet. And just to highlight that working together, Colindale Station reopens tomorrow. Working together, we've delivered homes in Agar Grove and in Brent Cross, both of which you've delivered. Would you agree with me that working together, we're delivering homes that Londoners need?
I mean, I think another member previously said that housing's one of the biggest challenges our city faces. I think it is the biggest challenge facing our city.
It leads to, I think, a brain drain from our city because young people who want to start a family or have a home with a garden are leaving London. It means Londoners commuting an hour and a half, 2 hours each way to and from work or to and from school. So we've got a huge problem in London. And, unless councils, developers, housing associations and others work together with City Hall, with the government, with others, we're not going to make progress. We've got to make sure that the supply of affordable homes meets the demand and sort out the private rental market as well. And the transformation in Westminster, in Barnet, in Wandsworth over the last few years has been remarkable.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. The next question concerns business rate reform, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Ahmad.
Thanks for your question. Yes, the GLA will be responding to the government's consultation on my behalf. I wholeheartedly support the government's plans to reform business rates as outlined in the discussion paper released alongside the budget on the 3rd of October. The current business rate system discourages investment, creates uncertainty and imposes an undue burden on our high streets. The previous government's approach of temporary rates relief schemes for the retail, hospitality and leisure sectors, which frequently changed annually, made it very difficult for businesses to plan ahead with confidence. If the government's proposals are adopted, then starting in April 2026, there'll be a permanent 40% reduction in the multiplier or tax rate for businesses operating on our high streets. To ensure this change is fiscally neutral, the 1% of premises nationwide with a rateable value above £500,000, including large warehouses operated by the online retailers, will pay a higher tax rate. This will help to level the playing field between high street businesses and online giants, better incentivise investment, address the issue of empty properties and support economic growth. London's businesses, as ratepayers, contribute nearly £9 billion annually, roughly a third of the national total. Westminster collects more in business rates each year than the 10 largest city councils outside London combined. London's economy therefore plays a vital role in supporting local services across London.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, for your response there. Mr Mayor, you talked about the consultation regarding online retailers and the changes to business rates. Can you talk a bit more about how, if that goes through, it's going to have a positive impact on the high street?
Well, one of the challenges, if you speak to anybody who runs a shop who's involved in retail, is the overheads they have compared to online. So they've got to pay business rates, they've got to pay rents, they've got to pay utilities, staff to serve customers and so forth, whereas online have none of that overheads, very little overheads. So it's not a level playing field. So often you can order stuff online that's cheaper than going to shops. What shops are doing, particularly post-pandemic, is trying to improve the experience of shopping, but also lobbying the government to make changes in business rates, which the government's done. The government's listened to the representation made by retail, which is why they're making this change to business rates. It makes them more competitive in relation to online, but also helps councils, because councils want to reinvigorate their high streets. I mean, our high streets are really valuable, they're precious, and we want them to be vibrant places, not ghost towns with either clone shops or empty shops.
Thank you. Will you be seeking reassurance from government that the new scheme will not reduce the GLA's funding from business rates?
This is a really important point, which is the perverse law of unintended consequences. So we'll be lobbying the government to make sure that if there is a reduction in monies raised as a consequence of changes to the national business rates system being changed, the government compensates us, because obviously we can't afford to have less monies coming in to do the stuff we want to do, which is so important, and by the sports businesses as well.
That's good news, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, before I finish, I was at the carol service at Southwark Cathedral in my constituency on Tuesday evening. Always a pleasure to be there. I had two young people with me, and I want to tell you how delighted they were to hear your message of hope for all Londoners and for the world. But it was really moving. Can I wish you, your family, and the GLA family a very happy Christmas and a peaceful 2025. And a happy Hanukkah to you, Zach, and to all celebrating.
Thanks. Bless you. Thanks for those nice words. Thank you.
People never remember Saturnalia, but still, never mind. The next... thank you. The next question is much on the mind of a lot of Assembly members. Elizabeth Line performance, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Mahfouz.
Thanks for your question. The Elizabeth Line is the most significant addition to London's transport network in a generation. I'm proud that it has quickly become one of the most popular railways in the country, carrying more than 750,000 people a day. The lines transform life and travel in London and the South East by reducing journey times, creating additional capacity and improving accessibility across London's transport network. It's no surprise that a recent YouGov poll named the Elizabeth Line as the most popular tube or rail mode amongst Londoners. Last month, TfL announced its intention to award the Elizabeth Line operator contract to GTS Rail Operations Limited, a joint venture between Go Ahead Group, Tokyo Metro and Sumitomo Corporation. The new contract will bring the best parts of Tokyo and London together to optimise the current operation and prepare for the increase in services to Old Oak Common, which are planned for 2030. This will include maintaining the focus on the safety of customers and staff, as well as investment in people and technology to help improve operating performance and better manage disruption, while ensuring the highest standards in customer information. I recognise there's been recent disruption on the west of the line, where the infrastructure is owned and maintained by Network Rail. Network Rail is now investing £140 million into Thames Valley improvement works, which has already led to performance improvements. I know TfL will continue to work closely with Network Rail and the new Elizabeth Line operator to deliver the most reliable service and to build on the line's transformational success.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And before I go into the question, I just want to congratulate you on your assist on Monday night. As I understand, it's going to be featuring on Match of the Day. And before you leave us for pastures new, I'm not going to ask the obvious question as to whether Arne Slot's already been in touch to poach you in the January transfer window. But with... Oh, yes. Now, as you said, with over 15 million commuters tapping in and out of Ealing Broadway Station last year, it's one of the 30 busiest stations across the country. I know that you are very well aware of the challenges that have occurred at the station, people being injured, getting on and off the station. And earlier this year, you took swift action after promising to do so, to put additional staff on the platform, putting additional signage and additional audio announcements for people to be aware of, making sure that they stay safe at that station. It's now time for Network Rail to pick up where you've left off and deliver on the structural changes that are required at the station too for the longer term. Can you update us on any discussions that you or the team have had with Network Rail in terms of progressing this much needed resolution? Well, first can I repeat my apology in relation to those who have had a bad experience and even worse, been injured as a consequence of what the members are referring to. Those incidents that he knows about are thankfully rare, but we can't pretend they haven't happened. So it's no consolation if you've been the victim of that incident to be told that, you know, the Elizabeth Line is the second best performing operator in the UK when it comes to passenger injuries measured per million passengers. The issue is the height difference between the train and the platform. Yes, it complies with the various safety standards, but it's not good enough for your constituents and the people you're concerned about. In the longer term, what we need to do is raise the platforms at Ealing Broadway. The issue, of course, is whose asset it is, and it's an asset, as you alluded to. That's not TfL's. So we're working with MTR Elizabeth for the interim stuff you've mentioned, the mini ramps, the announcements, the information streams, and so forth, so that Network Rail can go away and come back with a design solution that's permanent in relation to the platform and the train. It is an issue because the station you're talking about isn't one of the new stations. The central part of London new stations are fine. It's the existing Network Rail stations where there's an issue and stuff, and so Network Rail have been conducive to the conversations and watch this space. Thank you. And as you mentioned, in terms of safety, but also punctuality, actually, it's one of the best rail lines in the country on that front. I think you've already mentioned we've inherited tracks and signalling system on the west of London, which are causing ongoing issues for commuters in my constituency, particularly in near stations Acton Main Line and Hanwell, where they are more impacted than others by the impacts of that. Can you update us on how these issues are being addressed? So it's really frustrating that actually for the central part of the Elizabeth Line works incredibly well, the brand new stuff. But where we rely upon assets that aren't ours,
older assets, I'm not criticising Network Rail, older assets, there are challenges, signalling the track and so forth. I want to give huge credit to the Chief Executive of Network Rail. He's really worked incredibly hard to lobby the government to get more resources. They're now investing £140 million into the west part, the Thames Valley improvement works is the title given to this piece of work. And that will really make a difference in relation to improvements to the Elizabeth line going forward, because when there are disruptions and delays, they tend to be because of an issue in the west of the line, between Paddington and Reading. And these improvements will lead to, hopefully, those becoming a thing of the past. It is really important it happens. The Elizabeth line is one of the most complicated lines in the world. 3 separate signalling systems, existing tracks, new tunnels, old tunnels. And so it is complicated, but we need to make sure that we can iron out those problems with Network Rail solving them. And the way they've worked with us in the recent past has been fantastic. Nothing but credit to them.
Thank you very much. It'd be really positive feedback for commuters across West London. And finally, just to wish you and your family and the wider GLA family a very Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah.
Assembly Member Duval, please.
The Elizabeth line is a game changer. It's made a dramatic difference about how we get about this great city. If we can just, in terms of the performance of that line, but when, you know, given that we've come out of COVID, given where we are financially, the ambition for the transport agenda, you mentioned older assets and what we need to do with those and other issues, that we have an ambitious agenda here. Given what happened on the Elizabeth line's construction, when can we start talking about Crossrail 2?
So I was a baby minister that took through the Business Rate Supplement Bill that became the Business Rate Supplement Act that led to the business community in London paying a third towards the cost of the Elizabeth line, formerly known as Crossrail. I was then in the DfT as a minister, and we announced 2 things. We announced High Speed 2, and we gave the proper green light to Crossrail. One of them has been built. One of them is nowhere near being built. One of the pieces of advice I received in 2018 was to throw in the towel with Crossrail. It's too hard. It's too difficult. It can't be done. We didn't do so. We took it in-house. We finished it, and it's now a huge success. The envy of the world, the Elizabeth line. No other major city after the pandemic was able to open up this huge asset, this huge infrastructure. We, at the same time, as he'll remember, wanted to make progress when I became mayor in relation to Crossrail 2. Crossrail 1, east to west. Crossrail 2, northeast to southwest. We know the potential of transport infrastructure unlocking not just jobs and housing, but growth as well. The Secretary of State at the time, a man called Chris Grayling, for party political reasons, made a number of outrageous decisions. One, he did a U-turn on us taking over commuter lines, which had been agreed by previous Secretaries of State because he was being partisan and political and not very clever. Secondly, he decided to pull the plug on Crossrail 2. We pleaded with him, A, not to do so, but B, at the very least, to safeguard the route. Because we know from history, if the route is not safeguarded, it leads to it being more expensive going forward. The other downside is it can lead to blight going forward. So the good news is we've got some safeguards in place now in relation to what the Crossrail 2 route would be. The challenge clearly is we've got a government that's inherited a massive deficit in relation to the black hole. We've got High Speed 2 that's in a mess. This government's trying to fix the mess that is High Speed 2. They were going to end it in Old Oak Common. It wasn't a train line going from A to B. It was going from A 5 miles west of B. And so they've put the green light to it going to Euston. As far as we're concerned, our priority is the stuff I've talked about in relation to Pick Line trains, Bakerloo Line trains, DLR extension, West London Orbital, Bakerloo Line extension south, but also, once the government's got more confidence in relation to High Speed 2, coming back to Crossrail 2, which is potentially really exciting.
Thank you.
That being all the questions, we've come to the we have come to the end of the questions. Mr. Mayor, you're free to go. I'll see you this evening at the Christmas party, where I'll be throwing a few shapes on the dance floor.
Chair, can I just say, you ask me every year, we will not be having a dance as the mayor and chair.
You know, I just feel so spurned. So I will have to spend my time trying to get hold of bootleg drink tokens.
Chair, can I just ask for one thing, please? I've been asked by staff to ask you, if you were to confirm you won't be doing karaoke, we have a better turnout tonight.
Unfortunately, I will be doing karaoke. And I'm not sure what I'll be singing quite yet, but nothing Christmassy. Bar humbug. Anyway, here we go. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask the Assembly to agree the motion which is set out on the agenda in my name, which is that the Assembly notes the answers to the questions asked? We have to make a few more decisions. Can I ask the Assembly to note the recent action taken by me as Chair of the Assembly under delegated authority in consultation with party group leaders to hold a confirmation hearing in respect of the Mayor's proposed appointment of Dame Karen Black as the Chair of the Old Oaken Park Royal Development Corporation, and to hold a confirmation hearing in respect of the Mayor's proposed appointment of Mette Coburn as Chair of Re-London. And can I ask the Assembly to also note the recent confirmation hearing committee's decision further to its meeting held on the 2nd of December 2024 to recommend that the Mayor should proceed with the proposed appointment of Dame Karen Buck to the office of Chair of OPDC. I'm pleased it's noted. I'm pleased it's written down because I'm not clear I understand what I just said. Yeah, but it's, never mind, it's there. I trust Rebecca. We now come to the proposed delegation of authority. Can I ask the Assembly to agree in relation to urgent matters only a general delegation of authority in respect to the Assembly's powers and functions, apart from those that cannot be carried out under the GLA Act 1999, cannot be delegated, be given to me as Chair of the Assembly in consultation with the Chair of the GLA Oversight Committee, party group leaders and relevant committee chairs from the close of this meeting until the meeting of the Assembly, which will be at the Mayor's Question Time meeting on the 16th of January 2025.
Agreed.
Oh, the power. And the date of the next meeting will be the Mayor's Question Time meeting, which will take place at 10 a.m. on the 16th of January in the Chamber. Is that agreed or noted? There is no urgent business requiring consideration apart from everybody keeps safe over the holiday period. Goodbye.
Thank you, Chair.